92.5.
Well, it's about 2 minutes to 9 o'clock here in the studio of Radio Gold 90.5. Looks like a beautiful morning with the sun up. And I hope you had a wonderful sleep and you're having a good morning. A good morning to you wherever you are. And thanks for tuning into your power station, Radio Gold 90.5. We are live on a number of affiliates across the country. We are also live on RadioGold905.com. We are live on GFM Radio in London. And we are live on the tuning app. You can use that to listen to us. And then when the show starts, when the discussion starts, we'll be live on Facebook through PAP MCGH. PAP MCGH. PAB dash MCGH on Facebook. You can get to watch whatever we'll be doing in the studio live. Alternatively, if you are finding difficult locating, if you're a Facebook user and you are on my friends list on Facebook, just look for Senna number or share the video. You can use that link and watch what will happen here in the studio. And don't forget, you have opportunity to share your thoughts with us on the discussions we'll be having. Just comments using the comment section when you're watching on PAB MCGH. Alternatively, you can send a WhatsApp message to 0233 995905 0233 995905. And well, don't forget the show is probably brought to you by Franco Trading Enterprise, Mobile Water, TT Brothers, Kulun Ghana Limited. And Kulun Ghana Limited wants me to tell you that they are the producers of Mr. Q for vitality and for men who want to improve their sexual performance. King tablets is for high blood pressure, and Arababazine for control of menstrual problems in women. You can get all these medicines in licensed pharmacies nationwide. 3 products they are offering you. If you are a man, they are offering you Mr. Q. They are also offering Kin tablets, KIN tablets for high blood pressure, and Arababazine is for women. So get one of those products and check them out for yourself. And then Mobile Water, it says water is life, and life is only one. The choices you make can enhance or diminish these limited resources we call life. Make the right choice. Choose Mobile Water 20 liters bottles. Yes, go on. It is an instant refill door-to-door delivery service. So you get a 20-liter bottle of Mobile Water. They will come by occasionally when it is finished to refill it for you. Drink positive, drink Mobile Water. Mobile Water, unique in every way. Call their hotline on 0244 650 939 for instant supply, or visit them at Tema Headlights Industrial Area behind McBaron Hotel, Aflawo Road. Well, my name is Sana Nombo, by the way. A show is produced by Patrick Asford Bwedu with a lot of help from the technical department, Peter Kumasata, Mr. Richard Kwanzaa, and their boss, Mr. Tanko Rashid. And also, our condolences still out to you, Mohammed Kabori, who lost his mother recently and buried her too. Condolences still out to you. We are still with you. Keep hearts, and God is with you. And today too, before I even go on to say anything, there'll be a lot happening. So let me wish Dr. Deodat Adenuchi, an economist who has been on this show a couple of times, shares his thoughts with us, a happy birthday. And also to Abdul Musowi Abubakar, who's also celebrating his birthday today. And then Albert Utogwe is also celebrating his birthday today. Happy birthday to all of you. And a big thank you for joining us once again. If you are listening to us live, you're on Alhaji And Alhaji, the mother of all talk shows. And before we move on to what we'll be talking about, let me share with you what's on the front pages of the newspapers this morning. The Ghanaian Times will be transparent, objective, Emil Short. It also has President to address Parliament on February 21. Funeral service for slain journalist Ahmed Hussein Swali held in Accra. And then on the front page of the Ghanaian Times also is man gets 3 months for stealing church items. The Daily Guide has NDC goons unleashed terror on security operatives. And also, police make headway in Anas Boys murder. Cryptocurrency gurus in court, and I also commission takes off. And finally, the Daily Graphic has fake kidnapping claims. Police arrest too, and also more chiefs call on Yana. Let's focus on objectives of new regions, Danbotri, and VIP swears in commission of inquiry members. Comes with a picture of the three persons who are available to be sworn in and the swearing in. So that's one of the issues we will be talking about this morning. And I'll be joining the studio for this discussion, for the discussions by Mr. Kwesi Pratt Jr., who is a managing editor of the Inside newspaper, Honorable James Agaga, who is minority spokesperson on defense and interior, and member of parliament for Busan North, Honorable Alhassan Suhini, who is member of parliament for Tamale North, and Comrade Bernard Mona, who is national chairman of the People's National Convention. They will be joining me this morning. We'll be talking about security matters in Ghana. Well, they will critically analyze the minorities' boycott of the swearing-in of the newly elected member of parliament for Ayawaso West Wuogon, the peaceful demonstration of the Inter-Party Coalition for National Sovereignty, and the setting up of the Commission of Inquiry to investigate electoral violence on the 31st of January 2019 at Ayawaso West Wuogon. And then we'll be talking about the depreciation of the cedi and government failure to stabilize it. We also have been talking about security throughout this week. The cedi has been giving more of itself to the dollar. And we'll be talking about that issue as our second topic. If we have time, we'll take optional comments. Before we move on to the discussion itself, let me read to you the statement that was issued by the National Democratic Congress after the Commission of Inquiry into the Ayawaso West Wuogon violence was sworn in, and it was issued under the signature of the General Secretary of the party, Mr. Johnson Asiedu Nketia, and it reads, the NDT takes note of the establishment of a Commission of Inquiry in response to the local and international outcry that followed the scandalous assault on democracy during the by-election at Ayawaso West Wuogon on January 31st, 2019. It is gratifying that the power of the people has, for once, and that the present administration prevailed over the caprices of the executive. However, we remain skeptical about the seriousness with which justice will be pursued under the remit of an Emil-Short Commission. It had been the hope of many that the President's response to the people's demand would have acknowledged the expectation of a neutral composition. Rather, we are presented with a commission staffed by a roster of former appointees of erstwhile MPP administrations, some of whom are conflicted by their intimate relations with serving cabinet members. The President must take note that the appearance of political bias in such a matter as this has the same effect on the public confidence as its actuality. This concern is reiterated by the established record of presidential interference in similar inquiries and the subsequent clearing of even the most obvious breaches of the public trust. We will persist in our vigilance on behalf of the people of Ghana and of their republic, and will be unrestrained in our insistence that there is already ample evidence to pursue criminal charges against the perpetrators of the mayhem. We will not participate in any attempt to obscure the quest for justice by introducing irrelevant, extraneous affairs for the purpose of equalization, nor by the abuse of the inherent immunities granted under Chapter 23 of the 1992 Constitution of Ghana to protect the offenders from criminal prosecution. The public facts of the matter at hand point to criminal assault and a gross violation of the civil rights of innocent citizens. A subsequent attempt by senior public officials to deceive the Ghanaian people, and a concerted attempt to basely justify and cover up the atrocities. This is not mere conjecture. Our position is based on public statements made by the Minister of State for National Security, Honorable Brian Champon, who has explicitly admitted to the use of armed thugs under the facade of the National Security Council. These men were filmed by several media houses arriving in the vehicles of the Ghana Police Service and under their escort. This implies, at the very least, the cooption by the Minister of State for National Security of personnel and equipment of the police. Far worse, it points to the complicity of the Inspector General of Police and senior leadership of the Ghana Police Service in this flagrant breach of the rights of Ghanaian citizens. It must be noted that the events on which the inquiry must be premised are manifestly different from past incidents observed in prior by-election. This is not about vigilantism. The acts of overzealous rogue elements in either party in time past cannot be equated to the admissions of Honorable Brani Champon, which are tantamount to the use of state terror as a tool of political advantage. In any case, President Akufo-Addo has already prejudged the incident as isolated, as he has the outcome of the commission. There is no way that this commission of his favorites will come to any conclusion that contradicts security or the Inspector General of Police. They remain in office. Okay, I think I jumped a line there. It says there's no way that this commission of his favorites will come to any conclusions that contradicts his prior statement. The president has not deemed it fit to demand the resignation of the Minister of State for National Security or the Inspector General of Police. They remain in office and are evidently engaged in an active cover-up operation, including transfers of senior police investigators and deliberate obfuscation of the identities and whereabouts of the perpetrators of the violence in Ayawaso on January 31st. The position of the NDC is very simple. This Emil Short Commission is a non-starter on the basis of its composition, obvious political coloring, and the president's own track record. We will not relent in the pursuit of justice outside the commission. That's signed by Mr. Johnson Asiedu Nketia, who's General Secretary of the National Democratic Congress. And we are now live on PAB MCGH on Facebook. So if you like to watch what is happening in the studio, you can go on Facebook and check and look for PAB MCGH on Facebook and you get to watch what is happening right here. I wanted to read to you the letter written by Occupy Ghana to the Minister for National Security, and it is well, I'm trying to get that letter. Well, okay. It reads: deployment of an armed force by the National Security, and it says that during the 31st January 2019 parliamentary by-election held at the Ayawaso West Wogon constituency in the Greater Accra region, your office deployed an armed force not established by law to ostensibly perform policing duties. We have seen video footage of these men attired and bearing arms engaging in acts of violence that we have condemned in our public statement of 1st February 2019. We have also seen that some of these men were being driven in vehicles bearing the name and insignia of the Ghana Police Service and were in some instances chauffeured or accompanied by persons who appeared to be regular police personnel. Concerned about the legality or otherwise of the force, we have checked the Constitution, particularly Articles 83 to 85, 200 and 210, and all statutes relevant to national security, and have found no law that backs the force that your office deployed. Sir, Ghanaians have exercised our natural and inalienable right to establish a framework of government for ourselves, which is required to secure for us and posterity the blessings of liberty, among others. It is for this reason that our Constitution affirms that all powers of government spring from the sovereign will of the people, in whose name and for whose welfare the powers of government are to be exercised in the manner and within the limits laid down in the Constitution. Thus, any act and or omission that threaten these aspirations and legitimate expectations of Ghanaians ought to arouse the concern of all responsible and well-meaning Ghanaians. Therefore, we write to demand that you kindly indicate to us, 1, the legal basis upon which you assembled, maintain, and deploy that force of any. 2. If any. 2. The circumstance under which the Ghana Police Service facilitated the acts of that force by supplying vehicles or other logistics for the operations of that day. 3. The reason and necessity for maintaining the said force outside the legally and constitutionally recognized services established by law. 4. The procedure for recruiting persons into the said force. And 5. The financial provisions made for maintaining this force. We demand answers to these questions because the powers of government, as required by law, must be exercised first in the welfare of the people who were inexcusably violated by this force, and second, in the manner and within the limits laid down in the Constitution. This letter is a formal request for information under Article 21 of the Constitution. Further, it constitutes statutory notice of our intention to take appropriate action against the government should you fail to respond to and address the issues we have raised. Thus, if we do not hear from you, we shall go to court to seek reliefs, including, but not limited to, A. Providing information requested above. B. Declaring the said force illegal. C. Ordering that the force be disbanded. D. Ordering you to account for all sums of money expended on maintaining this force. E. And further ordering that all such sums be refunded to the state. The expenditure on the said force being contrary to the law. We are counting on your cooperation. That's from Occupy Ghana, and it's copied to the President, the Vice President, among other officers of state. If you just join us, you're listening to the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. We're just about to start the conversation. We are live on PAB MCGH. You can share comments whilst you are watching us on Facebook. You can also share your comments through 0233 995905 0233 995905. Before we start the conversation, Franco Trading Enterprise has in stock the latest mobile phones, accessories, laptops, printers, TVs, and has reduced prices for all Alcatel phones like Alcatel One, Alcatel U3, Alcatel tablets on the Ghanaian market. With any amount, you can get an original phone to buy from Franco Trading Enterprise. Their prices are affordable. Visit www.francotrading.com or www.francophones.com and buy from their online shop, and your phone will be delivered free within Accra, right at your doorstep. Also get up to 30% discount on every product you purchase using their mobile app or website. Just search on Google Play for Franco Trading to download the app. They can be located at Adabraka opposite Roxy Cinema bus stop. In Accra, they are on UTC roundabout behind the Despite building. La Paz, they are near Niboy Junction opposite Prudential Bank. Circle, they are close to Odor Rise. Osu, they are opposite Eco Bank on the Oxford Street, Tema. They are opposite Waterworks on the in Community 1. Medina, they are on the old road opposite HFC Bank, Hacho. They are opposite Hacho Station. Koforidwa on the All Nations University College Road. Ho, they are on the Market Road opposite Amagashi Building. Kasua, they are opposite the Kasua Polyclinic. You can call them on 0302 225 651 or 0546 133 188. Franco Trading phone Pepe Fie. So let's come to the discussion now, and we're starting with issues having to do with security in Ghana and the issues that have been raised across the week. Like I said, in the studio with me is Mr. Kwesi Prajini, managing editor of the Inside newspaper. Honorable James Agaga is minority spokesperson on defense and interior. Honorable Alhaji And Alhaji is member of parliament for Tamale North, and Comrade Bernard Mona is national chairman of the People's National Convention. Well, let's start with Honorable Alhaji And Alhaji, who is member of parliament for Tamale North, who had an interesting experience this week. Honorable.
Right, Senna.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Nice to have you as always.
Always a pleasure to be here. Let me say good morning to Uncle Kwesi and the rest of our colleagues, and also good morning to all listeners everywhere, and good morning to the constituents of Tamale North, as I wish them the very best of the weekend. So I wish I could say the topic is interesting, Unfortunately, I'm unable to because it is a topic that reminds us of pain and the threat that the security of this nation is faced with. And it is that important because I am of the opinion that investments that we see in this country, be it investments brought in by foreigners or investments done by indigenes themselves, usually are not attracted by all the things we pride ourselves of having, the natural resources, I mean. It is not the gold that attracts them. It is not the oil that attracts investors, both foreign and domestic. It is not the cocoa that attracts all the investments that we see that make our country great. The priceless commodity that Ghana have had for a very long time now is peace. It is the one commodity that have attracted so much investment, both locally and internationally, into this country. And that is why we must all do whatever we can to jealously protect that peace that we enjoy. Nothing must be allowed to threaten that peace, because that gone and Ghana is gone. All the things that we see that are beautiful and all the things that we know are beautiful that we hope to create will all be gone. And that is why, as we discuss the topic of security on constituency, I want us to remember that the perpetrators of Nanka Bruce, the security officer who was attacked at the seat of government, are still at large and punished. Let us also remember that the attackers of George Ajay, the Ashanti Regional Security Coordinator, who was dragged out of office like a bandicoot, are still at large. At best, they got a slap on the wrist when they went to court with the sum of money they were going to be charged to pay in their back pocket. Only God knew how they got to know how much they will be charged, and so they went to court with that. Let us also remember the attack on the Kumasi Circuit Court, where Judge Mary Century was manhandled and court properties destroyed. Let's not forget that. Let us also not forget the Prampram Magrad, who was shot in broad daylight. And let us not forget the Gapoha Marketing and Public Relations Manager, Mrs. Asante. My condolences to their families. Let us not also forget the engineer at the Ghana Water Company, Joe. He was a friend. I knew him personally. A gentleman. Let's not forget them and their families. Worst of all, let's not forget Ahmed Hussein Swale. Let's not forget Ahmed Hussein Swale, whose memorial service was just held yesterday at the Ghana International Press Center. And let's not forget the Takoradi missing girls. Let's not forget that girls have gone missing since August last year. And as we speak, we still do not know their fate. Let's not forget that. Even as we discuss the thuggery that was meted out to men and women, husbands and mothers, breadwinners of families, at the Ayawasu Wagon constituency by-election. Sena, I have said it somewhere that the lethargy, the hesitation that we see moral society demonstrate or show when it comes to the condemnation or criticism of what is considered generally wrong by people associated with the NPP is one of the greatest disservice to this nation. There is this unholy, attempt by some people in our society to insulate the New Patriotic Party and its leadership from things that they themselves generally agree are wrong and must not be encouraged or tolerated in our midst. And a classical demonstration of it was when, after actual blood was spilled, limbs broken in Ayawaso wagon, we had a short supply of condemnations in this country until a boot for boot comment was made, until a bloody widow placard was held. That is a classical demonstration of that level of lethargy and hesitation in condemning acts that we all agree and accept should not be tolerated in our midst when it involves the New Patriotic Party or its leadership. So actual blood was spilled. Limbs were injured. People were maimed. A dozen plus still in hospital receiving treatment. The condemnations were in short supply. But just for repeating what other political leaders in the NPP have said in the past, without condemnation, boot for boot, the condemnations started coming in from all walks of life. For carrying just a placard that didn't spill anybody's blood, we had heightened condemnations. You see, that is why I say it is the most disservice that we do to this country. That kind of attitude breeds and grooms retaliation and political equalization. Unfortunate as that may be, it gives others the opportunity to emulate that bad example. And so the earlier we put a stop to it and call a spade when there is a need to, without consideration of who is affected, the better for all of us, because it is only a fool who cuts the branch that he sits on. In this case, it is only a fool who lives in Ghana or who is a Ghanaian who will want to set it ablaze. That is why it is important that we eschew that level of hypocrisy in determining and criticizing and condemning what is bad in our society. How did we get here? It is because of the same attitude. I have already talked about some of these security lapses that we have seen over the period, maybe in the last 2 years, and how we have approached them with an attempt to insulate the system or the regime that promise us our security and our safety. Chapter 14 of the NPP manifesto reads, and I quote, "The NPP government will secure peace and security for all Ghanaians. Under the MPP government, Ghanaians will feel safe on the streets and in their homes. And it's important to stress the streets and their homes because of some of the examples that I have given earlier. The murder of the Gapoha marketing managers in her home and the murder of Ahmed Swale on the street. Ghanaians will go about their daily business in the secure knowledge that their persons, properties, and lives are safe under an MPP government. Now, when Nankabrus and others were manhandled, when the security coordinator was dragged out of office, when the magistrate, the judge, was heckled, the attitude was, oh, this is politics. Oh, this is politics. They are just playing politics. These groups, these things will destroy us. Just politics. No, it wasn't. It was a breach of the promise that we were made by the regime in place. And so when you say that the commander-in-chief should live up to his promise, it is not playing politics. Was he playing politics when he made that promise? So why is it difficult to hold him to that promise of ensuring that we are safe on the streets and in our homes? How does that become just plain partisan politics? What is even the use of politics if it does not ensure the quality of life of its people? What's the use of politics? And so why should the call for people to ensure that be trivialized by saying, oh, this is politics? Of course, even if it is politics, it is correct politics, because it is to guarantee the security and quality of lives of the people, and that is what politics is supposed to do. So it was with the NPP in opposition. And then again, we said this was politics. Vigilante groups were formed across the country and adored and embraced and justified. And we looked on. They perpetrated mayhem at their party office. They even, that even led to the murder of their own regional chairman. And we looked on and said it's politics. We were cautioned by international agencies. In fact, one time, one of the US think tanks said Nana Akufo-Addo, our president, was the greatest threat to our security, especially when he uttered the all die be die. But we said again that it was politics. So why are we acting surprised now when the monster that we have groomed and fed is beginning to consume all of us? It is those vigilante groups that they set up across the country, and that was unprecedented. Let's not kid ourselves. When people say let's equalize, let's do political equalization. Oh, the MPP too, the NDC too has vigilante groups. But what they did was unprecedented. We had regional vigilante groups named and adored and celebrated. They brought foreigners to train them. You remember the fate of Paul Afoko when he tried to stop it and insisted that Ghana must have one gun, and that it was dangerous for us to have this paramilitary arrangement that his party was training. Who came to his defense? Who heard him? Didn't we again say it was just politics? It is those people who were trained who now have access to our security apparatus and accoutrements to unleash mayhem on innocent citizens. It is those people who were trained by the Serbians and the South Africans. So if we did not display that lack of courage if we did not display that lethargy in condemning that, organization when it started, maybe we wouldn't be where we are. And now that we are here, we seem not to still be learning. Now that we are here, we still seem not to be learning. And that is why when even they perpetuated the mayhem in Ayawaso Wagon, the condemnations were in short supply. And the rationalizations are coming in all forms. First, we were told that nothing happened at Ayawaso Wagon, and that the NDC is just crying foul. Sam George and others were ridiculed at first for exaggerating what happened in Ayawaso Wagon. Then the MPP comes to hold a press conference to say that it was actually the NDC that perpetuated that mayhem on themselves, just to create disaffection for the government. The minister in charge of national security, Minister of State in charge of national security, comes later to tell us, and he's become a friend, in fact a classmate at the PhD class at Legon, that he authorized them. Now we have to know how they got the police vehicles, for example, and where they got the guns. Did he arm them with those guns? Guns that we don't even see our police officers wielding. How were their uniforms procured? And who gave the command? Was it the IGP? Because the national security by our laws does not have a standing force. But at least progress had been made from the denials that nothing happened to the total fabrication that the NDC was responsible for what happened, to an admission that indeed these were authorized men and women. I mean, men, yes, at least I saw one woman driving the vehicle, and women in uniform to unleash mayhem. And the president and the vice president says they are setting up a commission to investigate what? What is there to investigate? Crime has been committed. The criminals, because of our technology today, are being unmasked one by one. The minister who says he authorized that crime to be committed has owned up. So what investigation again? Is it another attempt to do what I have pointed to earlier? To again whitewash that regime because we find favor with it, so that we can lighten the threat that this development poses to our security? Is that the intention? Because if that is not the intention, this is a clear-cut case that you don't need to waste the taxpayers' money setting up a commission to do. Unless we are saying that the national security has a standing army, and probably it was that force that was deployed. We all know that can't happen. The police have said they don't know the people. The army have said they don't know the people. So clearly a crime has been committed. Those people, even though they were marks, are being unmarked one by one by their own recklessness, or maybe impudence, not recklessness. They are being unmarked one by one. The one who authorized them has owned up. So what is there to investigate again at the Ayawaso West Wagon? If it is not an attempt once again to water down the threat that this new law in our politics poses to the security of our country. however, would like to commend Mr. Bernard Bonner and the coalition that organized the demonstration last Thursday. It was massive, it was impressive, and the conduct of demonstrators deserve commendation. And that is why the leadership should also be highly praised for that beautiful demonstration. That is who we are as a people. Our anthem itself says we must at all times resist oppressors' rule. And the outpour of citizens on Thursday clearly assures me that as citizens, we are ready to face the tanks and the guns, if need be, to keep our country safe and to keep it peaceful. So it is up to the president and his government to do what will assure us that the people will not have to confront them, because the power of the people is greater than the vigilante forces that they are setting up. Even the training they are giving to their district chief executives will not stop the power of the people. But we don't have to get there. So let those who are pretending wake up and smell the coffee. I like what Mr. Kwesi said, that we do not need this, and that this is the commission is just a panic reaction to a problem that can easily be fixed or could have been fixed long ago. He deserves commendation for being that forthright on this matter. And I think that many like him should speak out. When the blood started spilling in Ayawaso, I was sad that it had to take the UNDP and others to condemn what was happening. Our president only described it as isolated violence. Really? When a dozen plus are in hospital, you call that isolated violence? Where's the electoral commissioner, who is the president's appointee, and she enjoys that tag because she dines with female appointees of the president, didn't even see anything happening at Ayawaso Wagon. She said it was peaceful and the security conducted themselves well. And those are the things I'm saying threaten our peace, because her conduct in the referendum and in this by-election does not give the Electoral Commission the needed credibility that it requires to conduct a general election come 2020. And so let's wake up. Let's let people pretending, because of whatever soft spot they may have for the NPP and Nana Akufo-Addo, wake up to the reality that, as we were cautioned when he was opposition leader, he still, as president, by his omissions, remain the threat, the greatest threat to our peace in this country. I hope I'll get a second chance.
Thank you, Honorable Suhimi. And before I come to Mr. Bonner, let me just read a couple of the messages I'm getting. And this one is from Kwame Inbato. He says, NDC should extensively educate Ghanaians on why it is opposing the Commission of Inquiry into the Ayawaso violence, because our constitution says that anyone who appears before any commission of inquiry cannot be tried in any court in the country. That's from Kwame Inbato. This one from Stephen Kobnato says, good morning, Senator, and to your abled panel. is, quote, his duties in the office of the president will be purely political, unquote. Those were the words of President in his usual style of praising his ministers when he appointed Mr. Brene Champong as Minister of State in charge of national security. The president was clear on the work of his security minister. He was clear in his mind that he would have to act to secure the political interests of the NPP by running a security that is made up of NPP members. What we are seeking to use the commission to do is to seek for truth when we are sitting on the truth. Until President Akufo-Addo rises, we can't find the truth. We saw how the state of security machinery and accoutrements were placed in the disposal of party tax to visit mayhem, and we must not pretend not to know. And we have a minister owning up. What else do we need to seek? And that's from Stephen Kobna Ato. Kojochu Mbuafo sends this one. Says, Senna, once again, I want to ask my kith and kin in the NDC to remind ourselves of our inaction when these militias were being formed by the NPP during the period we were in power. Our complicity in the events of today should make all of us now bow our heads in shame. Shame on the NPP for actualizing the violence that is wreaking havoc on us today, and shame on the NDC for sitting askance when we were in power and allowing this madness to fester. The plague is upon all our heads, and very verily should we say to ourselves that never again, never again, never again. Like the late great Robert Nesta Marley said, only a fool leans upon his own misunderstanding. And that's from Kojochum Boafo. And Koblavi from Pokwasi Bengazi says, we are praying that the committee set up to look into the West Wagon and Baraleshi shooting incident will be fair in the investigation by exposing and bringing the perpetrators to book and allow the law of our land to deal with them accordingly. Mr. Mona.
Thank you. Your topic is more than loaded. I can glimpse about 4 different topics in one. The minority boycott of Parliament, the demonstration that took place, the setting up of the Commission of Inquiry, and general security matters in this country. If I may touch on all of them, I'm sure that James will not get his share of time. I'll try to make my submissions on all of them brief. Let me start with the Ayawaso West Wagon incident and maybe events leading to the incident. First is that there was a by-election, and the reason for the by-election is that a member of parliament died. And therefore, there was to be a by-elections. The by-elections, in accordance with law, were supposed to be conducted within 60 days after the notice was given to the Electoral Commission. Somehow, for the first time, we exceeded that 60 days. All parties involved in these elections, we had the MPP, we had the NDC, we had the PPP, and we have the LPG, were the contesting parties. But the fact that they were the only parties contesting cannot exclude that all registered voters, irrespective of their party stance, had the right to go and vote. So PNC members in the constituency would go and vote because it is their civic responsibility. CPP members will go and vote. Igle party members will go and vote. Non-aligned persons will also go and vote, including the clergy. So as for the voting, it was not whether you had a candidate in there or not, but it was your right to go and exercise the vote. So the millions or the thousands that went there to go and cast their votes may not necessarily even have a party supporting or supporting a particular person. They were just going to vote based on the messages that persons had given them during the campaign. We are told that the registered voters of the constituency were about in excess of 88,000. at the conclusion of the elections on that day, we are told that less than 17,300 actually casted a vote. This is far, far, far below even 20%. In fact, we are told it's about 18 or 19% of the votes, the turnout. That alone indicates that something happened. The night to the election, we are told that a vice chairman of the NDC, Sofo Azoka's house, was raided, and he managed to escape. Anybody in this nation deserves a peaceful sleep and a peaceful home. Whether you are a PNC, whether you are a CPP, or whether you are non-aligned. No person has the right to come and invade your residence and tend to want to cause mayhem. Much more, an important person in a political party like the NDC, who happens to be the vice chairman, first vice chairman of the NDC. I'm right, eh? He is the first vice chairman of the NDC. His home was raided, and the police does not see it fit to get to find the perpetrators who went there and for what reason they had gone there. Next morning was the election, and by 8 o'clock in the morning, it was littered everywhere that a group of armed men, they were armed with almost everything. They had chains, motor chains, bicycle chains. They had catapults. They had knives. And above all, they had guns. And the guns were not ordinary guns. Guns that you cannot go into the market and easily procure. They were guns that only our state is allowed to have. Above all, they went there in police vehicles. You saw police inscription on it, and there was SWAT on it. These persons were fully dressed in NSC t-shirts. And I have been asking what NSC stands for. No answer has yet been provided. And I have said that possibly it is the Nadoli Sankana Committee or in Soko Sekwa Council. Because if it is not that, and they want us to believe that it is the National Security Council, then I'm sure that the composition of the National Security Council will inform us that those bulky men that we saw cannot be the National Security Council that we are talking about. These persons invaded electoral areas and polling stations at a time when the police had met with all the parties concerned and indicated that for the elections in Ayawaso by West Wagon, they were going to have a deployment of 600 policemen and immigration officers. And that at each polling station, there was going to be a minimum of 2 personnel, and that the rest would be backup. And that these personnel will go there without any arm, so as not to intimidate anybody. And within the constituency, we noticed that guns were fired, people were beaten, and punched left, right, and center in a member of parliament who had gone there to also monitor the elections. And when he saw what was happening and tried to question and to stand up for the rights of the people, was mercilessly beaten, punched left, right, and center. In the process, what I saw in one of the videos is that one of the NSC officials, in an attempt to punch Sam George, and I don't know where he learned his dodgings from anyway, he also dodged the blow, and the man was about falling, and then his weapon failed. A police officer picked that weapon and handed it over to this hoodlum. Whether the weapon was registered officially or known by the state, the police officer took the weapon and gave it to this man who was using his hand to knock a sitting member of parliament. Instead of taking the weapon away from him and possibly investigating to find out how he came by that weapon. It was handed over. That event led to the immediate withdrawal of the MDC the NDC to call that all its agents at the various polling stations should be taken. Reports that should be withdrawn. All that I heard is that these persons who did that at the Labaoleshi Presby School, where pupils were in session, actually started moving from one polling station to the other and demanding to know whether a certain political party agents were still at the polling stations. What was it intended? So from the various polling stations that they moved to, that place to, they heard that there were guns or somebody was arming people in his house. Because they moved from many, many polling stations all the way to Abelimpe. And so it's obvious that somebody somewhere planned this. And there are many questions now to ask. What are the questions to ask? How did the NSC officials get access to police vehicles? Because the Director of Operations of Ghana Police Service, DCOP George, has said publicly that those people who went there were not their men and they did not issue any instructions for search. So if you did not issue instructions, how could the Director of Operations see or allow vehicles belonging to the police to be used without his knowledge? The Inspector General of Police is unaware. Catapults belonging to the police were used. Guns belonging to the police were used. Chains belonging to the police were used. Who ordered the armory of the police to be open for such weapons to be used by these NSC operatives? So that also incensed Mr. President Akufo-Addo, who immediately called on the Inspector General of Police to investigate and to probe this matter. I have said at many levels that that was a pretentious lamentation from the president. Moments after the president said that, the IGP did not hesitate in constituting a committee. But immediately after that, what did we see? It was the Minister of State responsible for national security at the office of the president who came admitting that those thugs, those goons, those hoodlums were state-sponsored and that they ordered for the operation that took place at Ayawaso West Wogon. I am not aware that ministers have the capacity to order such operations to take place. We are in crisis because ministers appointed who have virtually no sense of security can sit down and order that a certain operation be taken without passing it through and routing it through the appropriate institution that is well clothed, and actually going into the armory of the institutions and taking their weapons, taking their vehicles and other logistics to go and prosecute a certain agenda. That is what the minister is telling us. So Mr. IGP was asked to set up a committee to probe this matter. As the IGP was into investigating this, he realized that no, he needed certain skills into the committee that he had set up. He broadened the committee by inviting certain persons into the committee and also expanded the remit of the committee. A day after that, we saw that the vice president, or is it the communications director at the presidency, had issued a statement saying that the vice president or acting president, in consultation with the president who is outside of the country, they are to constitute a new commission of inquiry. I thought it was Mr. President that instructed the IGP to constitute the committee. So this commission of inquiry, what is it going to do that the IGP's committee was not asked to do? Or now the IGP committee, which even he expanded a day before they set up the commission of inquiry, is relegated to the background as they have even started their work already and possibly nearing conclusion. What are we going to do with the IGP's committee and later expanded committee and the work that they have done or continue to do? Now that we are setting up a commission of inquiry that will probe even larger. Now, if you look at it from that perspective, then you have many questions to ask. I want to conclude on the commission of inquiry and then move into the issue of the boycott and then end up with the vice president in inaugurating the committee or the commission of inquiry had said so many fantastic things, and it makes good soundbite anyway. First, that they have assembled men of integrity, men and women of integrity, to do their job. Maybe we'll interrogate the integrity levels later. Second, that this is the first time that elections-related violence are going to be investigated by a commission of inquiry, and this is the first time we have had that. Third, that there have been election-related violence at various by-elections, and he mentioned Talensi, he mentioned Atiwa, and many others. And therefore, the committee is to look into this. If you read the terms of reference of the committee, you realize that the vice president possibly was not aware of even the terms of reference of the committee before he spoke. Because the committee's terms of reference are limited and exclusive to incidents that took place on the 31st of January 2019 at Ayawaso West Wagon. So the vice president's introduction, where he is inviting issues of other by-elections that were to be probed, is not captured by the terms of reference. Even when they said that the committee could expand its remit, they said that beyond, but it should be limited to the Ayawaso West Wagon constituency. So there's something wrong with the vice president posturing, as if this is to a committee established to check up election-related violence and how we should curb it. But this is specific to Ayawaso West Wagon. Now, what is historic about this? What is historic about this, in my opinion, is that for the first time in our history, in our election violence, the violence is not a party-to-party affair. It is not party members A versus party members B or party members C. It is not party boys or girls that are into a fight, in which instances is the security of the state that comes to ensure peace. In this instant, it is National Security Minister who said that they sponsored these persons to go and vandalize, terrorize, beat and shoot people. So the Ayawaso West Wagon violence is not the ordinary violence that we have seen in other by-elections. In Talensi, I was the one who fought the most. I participated in the elections. We fought each other. The police had to come in. We fought, we got to the collation center. We still were fighting in the collation center. It took the state police to come and restore order. The state did not sponsor people to come and rather cause disorder. The Ayawaso West Wagon, Brian Achampon is telling us that they sponsored the people to go and cause disorder. What are you going to investigate again? So get Brian Achampon to tell you how he came by the state assets, how he's funded the people, how many people he funded to go there, how he got access to police vehicles without the knowledge of the IGP and the operations director, how he got access to police guns and other accoutrements for the men and women that he deployed on that day. And get Brian Achampon to immediately resign, because as a minister of state, his duty is not to foment violence. His duty is to protect life and property. We did not put him as a minister of state to be going around parading people that will be shooting people recklessly. So when you come and say you are setting up a commission of inquiry, and we know about the Waku Commission and its aftermath, we have difficulty with you. Because what it means is that you are using this to just close. Because anybody who appears as a witness before the committee, the commission, is deemed to have appeared before a high court. And therefore, prosecution further further prosecutions is a problem. And we know that at Ghana 50, after all that rot was established, the matter is ended. It will amount to that we wasted state money in establishing the Commission of Inquiry. So in this vein, my suspicion is that we want to use this as a cover-up so that Brian Achampong will continue to be in office. IGP, whose inability to even supervise and to take charge of his office, continue to be in office. The Honorable Kandapa continue to be in office. That is what this Commission of Inquiry is established to do, in my opinion. Having said that, a day before, the minority in Parliament also went to Parliament, and a new member of Parliament was to be sworn in. The minority did not agree, and some of the minority members showed placards with inscription that I don't want to mention because I don't think that I support those things. Because even as I think that there was everything wrong with the elections, I cannot hold the woman responsible because she doesn't have control of security in this country. And therefore, the tagging that accompanied her possibly was inappropriate. But the minority has their right, and I listened to their argument. They said that at the time she came to Parliament, she was not yet an MP because she was not sworn in. That's the illegal things they are doing there in the House. But in the course of the deliberations, the minority were talking, the majority they were also talking. The minority walked out, and the next day they got to Parliament, and Mr. Speaker had to walk Suhini out because he was seen to be disrupting. Maybe the Speaker of Parliament has right to tell the honorable member for Tamale North to walk out. But a party or a group that has solidarity as one of their watchwords cannot allow one of their own to be expelled from Parliament. And they will sit unconcerned and continue to deliberate in the House. Where is the solidarity amongst the minority? And it is not the first time it's happening among the minority members. Recall Adongo, the MP for Bolga, when they were to investigate some other issues. He went to the committee and said, look, he can't come to the committee and you yank documents in my face and ask me, I need to go and prepare. He walked out and other members of the minority sat in. If the minority don't reason up together and act together, they will start singling you individually and walking you out of Parliament. James, you will not make a point in Parliament. Because anytime you begin to speak, they will see it as disruption and the Speaker will walk you out. And your colleagues will sit down. Because when it affected Suhini, you did not. When it affected Honorable Adongo, you did not. And as they begin to walk you out individually and singly, it will not be long. They walk your leader out of Parliament. Because they will have an agenda they want to prosecute without you. So I feel very, very uncomfortable with the attitude of the minority. You don't work like this. But who am I? I leave it at that so that you can deal with your own matters. I'm not into cause confusion amongst you. But I feel very, very bad that you allow the young man to suffer the fate alone. Now, we, in the face of all the issues that I have raised pertaining to Ayawaso West Wuogon, decided that, look, we need peace in this country, and that in spite of the economic difficulties, the poverty of our people, the lack of food and many other factors that plague us, the lack of jobs that is now breeding grounds for vigilantism, we needed to go out there and to protest the barbarism that took place at the Ayawaso West Wuogon, so that it doesn't recur anywhere in our political landscape. So that even if we are a poor people, even if majority of us are unemployed, even if economic difficulties will not permit us to make ends meet. But peace should be, and Sweeney said it. It is peace that becomes the fertilizer for investment. In the absence of peace, investment doesn't come. It will run away from you. And so, if we want Ghana to move forward, and the hope that we can even change the party that is putting all this hardship, there must be peace before we can do so. So we wrote to the Ghana police on the 31st, the same day that the event happened, that we intended to embark on the Agbewa demonstration. The regional commander, Patrick Edusei Sampong, called me on the 4th and requested a meeting. And I asked whether it was a one-on-one meeting. Then he said, no, with my team. And I reckoned that it was with the members of the Inter-Party Coalition for National Sovereignty. So a couple of us went there. I was there with Joshua Akamba, Otukono, Desmond Into, Dainagla, and Hassan, Al-Hassan. And when we got there, the regional commander said, oh, we have no problem with you going on your Agbewa demonstration, but we have a problem with the routes that you have chosen. And we have a problem with the fact that you want to go to the IGP, you want to go to the minister, and you want to go to the president. And I asked what the problem was. He said, no, they want us to use a traditional route for demonstration. I said, there is no traditional route for demonstration here. In any case, we have informed you adequately within the Public Order Act. So we expect you to do your duties. We thank you, and we expect you to come. So we left with the understanding that they will come, because I didn't want to engage them any further. And I said, if you have any difficulty, you know what to do. The Public Order Act is our guiding document. We left, and we thought that we had a good meeting. Only for the next day, we received a letter from the regional commander telling us that we should not use our route, and that there is a traditional route for demonstration in this country, and that is what they will urge us to use. And that we will terminate at the House of Folk Park. But we should make a request to the Minister for Interior, the Inspector General of Police, and the President, so that they can come to House of Folk Park to come and receive our petitions. That was ridiculous, was strange in my view. It's like we are demonstrating in Sandema, and then we want to present a petition to the IGP in Accra, and we want to demonstrate to Accra. And you say that we should come and stand at Tamale Airport and then send for the IGP to come and receive. If he doesn't come, what will happen? So we should go and stand at House of Folk Park and be expecting that the minister will walk all the way from his ministry and come to the House of Folk Park to come and receive our petition. This is new policing, and this is new way of presenting petitions. And don't forget that we've done this before. The Ropa demonstration that took us to the presidency, where we were even beaten. We went to the castle gates, and the petition was received by the chief of staff then, and supported by Kobna Japan, who was the presidential spokesperson, and Obosi Sai, then also Minister for Information. So it was strange to us. So I wrote back to the police and said, that position cannot be. And the police have no mandate to be directing us as to what we should do. And that we are unable to comply with their decision, and we don't even know about traditional rules for demonstration. The police did not get back to me until around 5, when I said it was getting late, so I needed to go to the police. It was at that time that they then called Otukono to tell Otukono that it was Kwesi Fori that called him, that they will allow us to use our routes and that we'll go to the designated places. 2 other policemen later called me, and I said, no, I wrote a letter to the regional police commander. I have not heard from him. So I had to personally now call him. And he said, well, they didn't have a response for us because they had advised that we should not use where we want to use. And we chose. I said, no, we are in communication with you. You wrote a letter and we wrote back to you. So it's proper for you to get back to us so we can get ourselves ready or otherwise. Eventually, we agreed that we were going to use our routes. And I saw Honorable James Agalga, who came to the demonstration. We used the route that we wanted to use. We walked the demonstration without any incidents. It was more of issue for calling for peace. From Circle all the way through the regional police headquarters, into the market and through Ladder and coming out of High Street, everything went peacefully. It was when we got to the Flagstaff House, just the junction at Afrikiko. I was in the company of Kofi Adam. James, you were almost tired then. I think you went to the back, or either you ran to the front. At that point, I noticed that a certain guy who was close to me at the start of the demonstration had was being chased by some of our protesters. Apparently, he had walked down all the way with us. He was very close to me. It took some other ex-servicemen who were amongst us to identify that no, he was an infiltrator. So they came and whisked him away from where we were. I was with you at the time. So they took him away. And I didn't see him again until we got to the Flagstaff House, the Afrikiko Junction there. When I saw that blows were being thrown at him, only for me, I told Kofi Adam that, look, I have to go closer to the gate. So they then ran to go and see. And they got there, and the guy had actually said that he was a national security operative, and they identified him as one of the invisible forces. He had a gun on him, a pistol on him, and he was now telling people that they should not walk where they are because the national security will not allow him. And because people spotted him with us, and also having in the back of their mind that so-called national security operatives took the action at Ayawasu West Wagon, they pounced at him. But for Kofi Adams, Courage Ballon, Desmond Into, and others, I'm sure the story would have been different. They went and they were able to get hold of him and asked the people to go away, and they handed him over to the police. That is the only incident that I can say nearly marred a beautiful and a very successful demonstration. The conduct of the police was very professional that day. At every junction that they suspected that people could easily stray, they were there. The regional commander himself worked with us throughout the entire processes. By the time we got to the Ministry of Interior, he was there at the gates. By the time we got to the IGP, he was there. By the time we got to the presidency, he was there, and I commend him. So this tells us that if the police and when the police want to exercise their professional etiquettes, they are able to do it to the excellence. And nobody was masked. All the police persons that came out that day, none was masked. They were able to steer this whole process to a successful conclusion. We submitted our 3 petitions. Our demands were clear. The IGP cannot continue to hold office at a time he has shown such gross incapacity in taking care of the logistics and assets of the police, including the arms of the police. If he was not able to handle that, it means that he is not competent to continue to hold office as IGP. The Minister of State for National Security cannot continue to hold office, particularly when he has openly and pompously agreed and admitted that he ordered the kind of operations that occasioned this violence and fear among people that led to the lowest turnout in our election history, 19%. And in some of the polling stations, it was actually 6%. Because why should people go to determine an MP and be faced with violence and gunshots? Why is the minister still in place? And why is the Minister for National Security, under whose office Brian Achampon's work, is still in office? And we have said that as for the Commission of Inquiry, it's a facade, it's a huge joke, it's intended to cover up all these things and to ensure that the perpetrators are left off the hook. Above all, after all this, the General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party, who has in the past insisted that they don't have confidence in the Ghana police to handle and to check their party officers, and that they believe in the efficacy and potency of the people they marshal than the Ghana police, said that they are not going to dismiss any minister in relation to this matter. This is serious. The General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party sits in cabinet and positions the party in cabinet. And therefore, if Mr. President is setting up a commission of inquiry, taking cue from what the General Secretary is saying, it means that the decision was taken at cabinet to set up a commission of inquiry that will do a cover-up. Because the General Secretary has said openly that the issues that we are talking about will not be investigated because they support the actions of those men at the Ayawaso West Wagon. Finally, let me thank the many, many people who came for this Agbewo demonstration. I want to thank the MPs who found time. I want to thank the civil society members, ASEPA. I want to thank the actors and actresses who joined with us. Some members of the clergy who joined with us. So we could demonstrate that this nation deserves peace and that the words of Kofi Kunsim must be reversed. That when President Akufo-Addo becomes president, you can't sleep with your eyes closed. We want to sleep with our eyes closed. So that is why we went on the Agbewo demonstration. If the government fails to heed our request to ensure sanity in the system, the Agbewo demonstration will move from Accra into other regions because everybody in Ghana is a peace-loving person, and we want to ensure that apart from the few who are being used, and let me conclude by saying that who now see vigilantism as a source of employment, and there are people behind promoting it. Without that, we will not sit and allow election 2020 to degenerate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mona. Honorable Gaga.
Good morning. Good morning to Senior Comrade Kwesi Pratt and my chairman, Bernard, and my colleague Sohili. Well, I think this is the second time that you have invited us to discuss matters relating to our country's security in the wake of the Ayawaso West Wagon by-election. Before I make my comments, I'd want to wish the victims of those unwarranted attacks at the election a speedy recovery. I have read in the news that Ishao Yaro is likely to have his leg amputated. It is my prayer that the doctors attending to him will be able to find a solution to his injury so that his leg is not amputated. I am informed that Ishao Yaro is a footballer by profession who, until the unfortunate incident happened, used to ply his trade around India or so. And so if his leg is amputated, what it simply means is that his source of livelihood is going to be terminated. Aside Ishao Yaro, I am also reliably informed that some of the victims include women. At least 2 women were also shot at and are recuperating at the various hospitals they were sent to. Now, having said that, I would want to start by making it clear that it's over a week since the Ayawaso West Wagon elections were held and characterized by violence. Now, the first gentleman of our land, President Akufo-Addo, was in this country when the elections, of course, was characterized by violence and many people sustained various degrees of injuries. He made a statement, but that statement the president made was a congratulatory one, and in it, in passing, he briefly observed that the election was characterized by some isolated incidents of violence. I think that was the only comment the president had to make about the violent nature of the elections. A few days later, or I think about a day or so later, the president found it convenient to fly out of this country and attend to international business. Even though, if you look at the mandate of the president, yes, he's responsible for the conduct of the international relations of our country. But you would only do that when everything is well home. And so where the internal security situation of your country is not conducive enough, you don't go about conducting the international relations of your country in a manner that the president has sought to do. And so for me, I wish to observe that the president's decision to leave Ghana at a time when armed thugs were deployed under his own supervision and watch to unleash brutality on innocent Ghanaians, whose only crime was that they came out to exercise their constitutional mandate of participating in an election to determine who their member of parliament would be, is very irresponsible, to say the very least. President Akufo-Addo ought to have stayed back, given the fact that he's the chairman of the National Security Council, stabilize the security situation back home, and attend to international business much later. We have had situations whereby presidents of other countries who traveled out of their countries to attend to international business decided to cut short their foreign trips to return home and attend to their people in their time of need. But our president is simply not bothered. He can't be bothered at all. Why? Wouldn't it have been good if President Akufo-Addo visited the victims of that dastardly attack in the hospitals? Is it because the attack was unleashed by the secretariat of the body that he chairs, the National Security Council? Remember that the now National Security Ministry is nothing but the secretariat of the National Security Council, which is provided for under the Constitution. And that council is chaired by President Akufo-Addo. Is it because the violence was directly unleashed under his watch? It's not far-fetched to say so, because remember that Brian Achampong is a Minister of State at the secretariat to the council the president chairs. That is why the president did not find space in his heart to at least cancel those international trips and attend to the people, his citizens, those who voted for him to become president of this country. But he didn't do that. I mean, what is that? To compound matters, when he left, I think the vice president assumed responsibility as acting president. Said, I'm not aware that the vice president has also found or made time to visit the wounded in hospital. I mean, you can contradict me. Has he done that? In fact, the MP for Ayawaso West Wuogon, Madam Lydia Seram, only visited the wounded after we had started talking that she had not been responsible enough, given the fact that she was the one whose election was marred with violence and Ghanaians suffered brutality and some were hospitalized. She didn't until we started talking. She only found time to visit them after we had brandished placards on the floor of Parliament. And I'll come to the issue of the placards in a few minutes. So she went there after we had mounted pressure on her. She paid heed and, you know, in a half-hearted way, decided to not visit the victims. But seriously speaking, the belated attempt, for me, the shine was already taken out of the visit, because she ought to have done that without our prompting. But she waited. She was very comfortable. She was probably enjoying her victory, the victory which resulted in the spillage of blood. And yet when we say Madame Lydia Seram was the direct beneficiary of the brutality that was meted out to the innocent Ghanaians who came out to vote, people have problems with that. People are quick to single us out and attack us. I watched a footage of Good Evening Ghana, and my own friend, Paula Domochiri, rather than condemn the acts of brutality that happened on the 31st of January, decided to descend heavily on me. He attacked me because, in his view, I was one of the MPs who brandished a placard with the inscription, Bloody Widow. So Paula Domochiri found it very convenient to demand that I apologize and that I should be ashamed of myself. So now let me use this medium and remind my good friend Paula Domochiri that I am not ashamed of myself. In fact, if there's anybody who should be ashamed of himself, it is the MPP government. It is President Akufo-Addo. It is Brian Achampong and the entire national security setup who should bow down their heads in shame for unleashing brutality on the innocent Ghanaians who poured out on the 31st of January to cast their votes. They are the ones who should apologize to the good people of Ghana. After all, why? Brandishing placards in Parliament is normal parliamentary practice. And so if Paula Domochiri is not aware, I would entreat him to take time off his busy schedule and study parliamentary practice and procedure. And when he's done that, he would come to the realization that what we did on that occasion is part of our tools that can be deployed at any time to register our dissent whenever we think things haven't gone right. Our history is replete, parliamentary history is replete with instances when members felt agitated and brandished placards to drum home messages. Sometimes we go overboard. But let Paul Domochiri not seize that opportunity to denigrate my hard-won reputation and image. I would like to send those words of caution to my good friend Paul Domochiri. Look, in 2013, I had just been sworn in as Member of Parliament a few weeks. And after we had been sworn in, President Mahama came to Parliament to deliver his first State of the Nation address. At the delivery of the State of the Nation address, remember that the MPP had faulted President Mahama's victory, and at that time had given an indication that they were going to go to court to seek to annul the EC's declaration that President Mahama had won the 2012 elections. So they took the decision to boycott parliamentary proceedings on that day. And the evidence is there for all to see. On that day, they brandished placards with the inscription, "Stealers." I took issue with them and actually filed a motion to have the entire minority group at the time cited for contempt. When I did that, Freddie Blay, who himself had served the Parliament of Ghana as a deputy speaker, at that time he was acting chairman, he had these words to say. I am referring you to Ghana Web and the 26th February 2013. It's captioned, "Complaint against NPP MPs will not work, Blay." And this was what Freddie Blay had to say. He said, when President Kufuor was in power, there were quite a number of placards that were wielded by the minority then. And when Professor Mills was also in power, the minority then, and when Professor Mills was also in power, the minority then, the MPP members, also wielded placards. But I don't approve of it. But then he had this to say in addition. For you to say you are referring a whole group of people to the Privileges Committee and that you want the Speaker to refer it, who is going to do that? It's made up of a committee of members from both sides. I don't think it will work. These were the words of Freddie Blay when I attempted to drag the entire minority at the time, led by the current majority leader, Oseche Mensah Bonsu, before the Privileges Committee for committal for contempt. Now, the question I want to ask Paul Adumochire is, what has happened? Where was he? Was he not in this country in 2013? When the MPP members of parliament brandished those placards and described President Mahama as a stealer. Where was he? If his voice is a voice of conscience, then what was wrong in 2013 ought to have been condemned by him. But all of a sudden, he's found his voice and can sit on TV and take me to the cleaners. I mean, you should get serious. So, brandishing placards is normal parliamentary practice. In any case, people have had issues with the description of Madame Lydia Seram as bloody widow, and they think that was very offensive. I have said, and we all saw what happened, the happenings that resulted in the walkout orders imposed on my brother, the Honorable Suhuyini. You see, the majority deputy chief whip moved the motion on the floor of the House, pursuant to Order 93, to have the Speaker, it was an invitation that was extended to the Speaker to order the minority to apologize for brandishing the placard. Now, that particular order does not and couldn't have formed the basis for the order the Speaker of Parliament purported to make on that occasion. Because what is contemplated at the Order 93 is that whilst proceedings are in progress, whilst members are debating each other on the floor, when you make certain statements about another member, you can be called upon to render an apology to that member because you have used offensive language against that member. But Suhuyini has demonstrated in this studio that at the time we staged the walkout, Madame Lydia Seram had not been sworn in and therefore was not a member of parliament. And so how could one invoke Order 93 of the standing orders, and the Speaker also accepted the invocation of that order and made the orders requiring us to render an apology. So our leadership resisted and said we were not going to render any apology. Further steps, decisions were taken that, okay, they would review the video footage and possibly refer our conduct to the privileges. I want to serve notice that I am willing to appear before the privileges. But if I do, two things will happen. Madame Lydia Seram would have to, I would make an application for Madame Lydia Seram to appear and for me to cross-examine her to determine her status. Because a preliminary determination would have to be made on the issue of whether or not she, Madame Lydia Seram, is indeed a widow. Those preliminary facts must be established before we can be held for contemptuous behavior. I don't want to preempt anything, but that notice I have served, because you have to establish the preliminary facts before you can then proceed to deal with the substance of the matter. If the preliminary facts cannot be established, then the entire matter before the privileges must fail. So we are ready. The attempts to reduce whatever happened into a gender debate, to make it look as if we were gender biased, will not wash. Because there is one fact which cannot be controverted, which is that the lady in question is the principal beneficiary of the violence that characterized the elections, even if she was not the one who ordered those armed goons to unleash the violence. And so on that score, I would disagree with Chairman Bernard that the woman did not do any wrong. Even if she did not, one cannot run away from the fact that she benefited from the lawlessness that ensued at the elections. She is the principal beneficiary. So you cannot run away from the fact that her hands are tainted with the blood of the 8 people who were shot at. Even the president cannot run away from that fact, because it is under his watch that those armed goons were unleashed to commit those atrocities. Brian Achampong's hands are tainted with the blood of the 8 people who were shot at without any provocation. So it's Honorable Lydia Seram's hands. Why do we have to play ostrich and not say what is obvious? And so the truth of the matter is that those voices of conscience who, rather than condemn the acts of brutality on the day of the elections, found it convenient to descend on people like us, should revise their notes. We are not going to be intimidated by those reckless condemnations. We are very resolute and firm, convinced in our minds that the actions we took were legitimate. They were clearly in tandem with acceptable parliamentary procedure. So let them go back into history. The motion I filed was not even dismissed by the Speaker. And so if that is anything to go by, that motion is still pending. They may have to deal with my motion, which was one that sought to cite the minority at the time for contempt before they get to it gets to our turn. So, Seda, after boycotting the swearing-in ceremony of Madame Lydia Seram, we marched to the police headquarters. Our objectives were twofold. First, the police had invited our colleague Sam George, who was assaulted in the presence of police officers who did nothing to rescue Sam George from the assault. What we saw was that the police acted as accomplices of the assailants, because while Sam George was being assaulted, something fell. I didn't even know what it was until Bernard said it was a weapon, and the police officer bent down, picked the object, and handed it over to that criminal of a person who assaulted Sam George. Why didn't the police officer on that occasion arrest the man in question and sent him to the Legon police station and preferred a charge against him for assault? That was never done. And so our first objective that morning was to accompany Sam George to the police, because he had received a call. After making a complaint, he lodged a complaint at the Legon police after the assault, but it took them so many days to respond. So the morning Madame Lydia Seram was about to be sworn in, he suddenly received a call from a police superintendent at the CID headquarters to come to the police headquarters and assist them in their investigations. We decided that it was very important to accompany our colleague, to solidarize with him. So that was the first objective. The second objective was also to impress upon the Inspector General of Police to deal with the perpetrators of the crimes that were committed on the 31st of January at Ayawaso West, Uagon. Now, many people said we had even flouted the Public Order Act, and that what we did was a demonstration. It was an unlawful demonstration. Yes, that is the extent to which some people went. One, we accompanied our colleague who had been brutalized. They didn't think it was important for us to solidarize with our colleague. Why? The police headquarters is a public office. It's a public place, Senna. So are you saying that as Ghanaians, as legislators, we cannot walk to the police headquarters and have a meeting with the Inspector General of Police? And that when you decide to walk from Parliament House to the police headquarters, all of a sudden you have violated the Public Order Act. That is how petty some people have become. Now, I am relating to all these issues to establish one point, which is that there have been several attempts on the part of MPP apparatchiks to divert attention from the real issues. Minority is not law-abiding. They have flouted the Public Order Act by marching to the police headquarters. They brandished placards. They have sought to reduce the debate into a gender debate and make it look as if we are gender biased. We are not gender biased. If, Senator, you were the one who stood on the MPP ticket and won that election, you are not a woman. If you had lost your wife in the process, you too would have become a widower. We still would have descended on you in the same measure that we descended on Madame Lydia Seram. So how does gender come into this? And all of a sudden, some gender activists whose voices I haven't heard in so many years, after the violent acts and intimidation, they never said a word. But all of a sudden, they discovered their voices and started writing articles and posting them on social media. I think they are the people who should bow down their heads in shame. I will not. I will not. And so we went to the police station. That same evening, IGP issues a statement and says, I have expanded the scope of investigations. So did our going yield any dividend? Because that same evening, the IGP issues a statement and says, I've expanded the scope of investigations because we had impressed upon him that we're not going to take lightly any attempt to cover up. That same evening, the scope of investigations were broadened. So, what we did was for a good cause. It yielded dividends that same evening. Now, on the issue of the setting up of a commission of inquiry, a lot has been said. The media landscape is awash with pictorial evidence of whatever transpired at Ayawaso West, Uagon. The attacks are all captured on video. The images of those who carried out the attacks, even though they were masked at the time they were unleashing brutality, subsequent pictures have unmasked them. And so it is indeed true that the police know where to find these characters, because Brian Achampong has taken responsibility for the deployment. But for the fact that Brian Achampong is above the laws of Ghana, if he had been arrested by the police, I'm sure he would have disclosed the identities of all those who took part in that operation. But you see, they can't do that because Brian Achampong, at the moment, is above the laws of the country. In any civilized country, Brian Achampong wouldn't even have waited for the president to fire him. He himself would have resigned to pave way for investigations. So, right from the onset, because the police showed clearly that they were not interested in carrying out credible investigations, we made calls for a bipartisan committee at the level of Parliament to be established to further investigate these matters. Not a commission of inquiry. That the president responded by causing to be established a commission of inquiry. All the limitations associated with the work of commissions of inquiry relative to prosecutions, I mean, it's trite knowledge. We all know, and so many have even argued that when the Waku Commission of Inquiry made recommendations for some individuals to be prosecuted, it went beyond its mandate. And this was later on established in the Ghana at 50 case, when the former Chief of Staff, Kojo Mpienim, and Tarzan were charged after a commission of inquiry had looked into the matter. They were acquitted. And Justice Mafusao's judgment is very instructive. You know, there are two vehicles. One, if you want to go the way of prosecutions, do that. But the moment you allow the people to appear before the commission of inquiry and testify as witnesses, you cannot turn around and prefer charges against them. That would be a wrong step to take in law. So those who have made the case that the commission of inquiry is designed to insulate the perpetrators of the crimes we all witnessed at Ayawaso Uagon are justified, because there is judicial precedent to that effect. They are more than justified. Some have also made the case that, listen, if you look at the very composition of the membership of that commission of inquiry, clearly you would see that most of the people on the commission are former appointees. So the case of the former Inspector General of Police, many have argued he was appointed by President Kufuor as Inspector General. And then my own law professor, Professor Mensa Bosu, had also served on the National Reconciliation Commission and some other arguments. But the Constitution enjoins the Commission of Inquiry to do an impartial and a faithful job. But the issue is that if we're all interested in the prosecution of the perpetrators, then the vehicle we have boarded is the wrong vehicle. So I wouldn't even want to go into the whether or not the members are aligned politically. No, for me the fundamental issue is that the Commission of Inquiry is not necessary because the evidence abounds and we could simply just act on the same. I know time is, we're running out of time, but let me touch briefly on the demonstrations, the demonstration that we had. I commend the organizers of the demonstration. Ben and his colleagues did a marvelous job. The demonstration itself was very peaceful, except for the incident that happened around the Flagstaff House, which nearly marred the beauty of the demonstration. But remember that even before the demonstration was staged, we picked intelligence that those same hooligans who caused mayhem on the 31st would infiltrate the ranks of the demonstrators and attempt to create violent scenes to make it look as if the demonstration itself was not peaceful. And so for me, I am not surprised. This gentleman who was found wielding a firearm, he was wielding a firearm. It goes to justify all the rumors we had heard that there were plans by the national security to infiltrate the demonstration and cause some semblance of what? Violence. So they'll go out there and say, look at them. Look at them. And I've seen the publication on the Daily Guide. You see, if you read this headline, what they're trying to equalize and to create the impression that whatever happened was similar to what happened at the Ayawaso by-election. But they have failed because the man in question owned up and said he was a national security operative. National security operative? Why? The police deployed on that occasion to police the demonstration. Was he one of the men deployed? And so maybe Bernard would have to ask the regional police commander to give us the list of the men he deployed. If this person who claims to be a national security operative was not also deployed, then there is a problem. He should probably be dealt with. Yes, he should be dealt with. In any case, who is he? Is he entitled to carry a firearm? Bernard, is he entitled to carry a firearm? Does he belong to any of the security agencies of our state entitled to possess firearms? If he's not, if it is established that he's not a police officer, he's not a BNI officer, a research department officer, a military officer, or an immigration officer, a custom officer. These are the security agencies of state mandated to carry firearms by the laws that established them. If this gentleman does not belong to any of those security agencies, he must be charged with possession of firearm, at least, so that people who intend to do this cause unnecessary troubles when citizens decide to exercise their constitutional right to demonstrate, I mean, he should be dealt with to serve as a lesson. But all in all, the demonstration sent a very powerful signal to President Akufo-Addo that Ghanaians are watching him and that his own credentials as a human rights activist who in the past went to our courts and stood for those who were downtrodden is fast eroding in the face of the brutalities that were meted out at Ayawaso on those innocent Ghanaians. His human rights record has suffered a sizable dent. The international community is watching. They have all condemned whatever happened. If I were President Akufo-Addo, I would sit up. But you see, they are not learning their lessons. Because only yesterday, Joy FM uncovered yet another plot by the MPP to train more armed goons to visit violence in election 2020. That letter was read. The security liaison officer in Upper West, Bernard, I'm sure you know him, one Captain Tengabo. I mean, can you imagine? They want to train macho men, 10 each per polling station, to protect the ballot. And if you listen to Captain Tengabo, he says, yes, the men will be trained so that when the police are unable to provide security on election day, those men will now intervene. God help us.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mr. Pratt.
Wow. Well, first of all, I don't think that there's any surprise in what has unfolded, since the Ayawaso West Wagon election. There's no surprise because the new patriotic party and its leadership indicated to us long before the election that brought them to power that they had absolutely no confidence in the regular security forces and that they would rely on their own structures, their own hoodlums and so on for their defense and their protection. And what happened in the Ayawaso West Wagon by-election is just another affirmation of the lack of confidence in the regular security forces. Now, we are talking broadly about the use of violence in politics, and it has an interesting history, an interesting global history, and an interesting local history. Throughout our history as Ghana, throughout our history, the forces of reaction and counter-revolution have always used violence to have their way. They have always used violence when they have known that the mass of the people are against their adventures in the capture of power and in the maintenance of power. You see, the history of colonialism is one of extreme violence. The British, the Dutch, and so on, did not colonize us through persuasion. They colonized us using extreme violence. They waged wars against our people. Today, if you travel along the coast and you see all the forts and castles, and you see those huge cannons and so on, those cannons were for war. Those cannons were to fire against defenseless, innocent people who would not submit to colonialism. So that aspect of the violence, violent history that we have, needs to be understood very closely. Now again, it is clear that the opposition to Nkrumah used excessive violence in their view, to make them relevant in our politics and so on. There is a pamphlet that I think as many people as possible should read. It's a pamphlet which has been published by the Socialist Forum of Ghana. And it is the judgment which was written, and actually which was given, in the trial of Obeche Bilamte and others for terrorism. That judgment was actually written by Mr. Edward Akufo-Addo, or Justice Edward Akufo-Addo, Justice Van Leer, and Justice Akukosa. And they make it clear. I mean, Edward Akufo-Addo, Van Leer, and others make it quite clear that the opposition in Nkrumah used terrorism to gain political relevance and so on. Now, the use of violence has always come when political entities, political parties and others have realized that they have lost the confidence of the population. In fact, the violence against Nkrumah intensified. It took on a huge dimension after the 1951 landslide victory of the Convention People's Party. That was the time when elements of the now Dankwa Buzia tradition and so on attempted to bomb the house of Nkrumah near the Malata market. It was from then on that rallies of the Convention People's Party were attacked with grenades in stadia and so on. You understand? So there's a certain consistent history of the use of violence. Of course, there was counter-violence. The Convention People's Party was compelled to defend its members. The Convention People's Party was compelled to also organize a counter-force which would ensure that its people, its members, its sympathizers and so on, could go about their legitimate duty without being intimidated by the hoodlums of the United Party. Now, throughout our history, we have had low points, you understand, in the use of political vigilantism and violence. Look, when Ametewe attempted to assassinate the Osajifo in the Flagstaff House, and in the process shot Salifu Dagati, it was a low point in our history. When opposition elements planted a bomb in a bouquet of flowers and gave it to an innocent school child who exploded, it was a low point in our history. When the Accra Sports Stadium was bombed by elements of the UP, it was a low point in our history. And one of those victims still lives in Dansoma. Madame Asantua is still alive. She's still suffering the pains of that bomb explosion. You understand? When in 1995, the Kumipreku demonstration was organized and it was attacked by hoodlums, leading to 6 deaths, it was a low point in our history. When in 1992 or 93, the Western Regional Chairman of the National Democratic Congress was burnt alive, it was a low point in our history. I mean, recently, when the Upper East Regional Chairman of the New Patriotic Party was sprayed with acid and died as a result, it was a low point in our history. So there have been many of these low points in our history, you understand? Indeed, when the CPP chairman in Tamale, regional chairman in Tamale, was Alhaji Mobila, was killed in a very gruesome manner, it was a low point in our history. But I'm saying that if you look at all the low points in our history, this is perhaps the lowest point in our history. I mean, I was so shocked and scandalized when I saw the videos from the Ayawasu by-election. I mean, completely scandalized. What happened was shameful and unprecedented. Never in our history have hoodlums, tonton makuts, been mobilized and armed to this extent. to raid innocent citizens whose only crime was that they wanted to vote for their own choice, their choice of parliamentary candidate, and so on. And they behaved in the most reckless manner. I mean, in one of the videos, everybody has seen the video, so there's no point describing the videos. In one of those videos, I saw a gentleman in a white Lacoste. He posed no danger to anybody. He could not harm anybody. There were about 20 or so of these hoodlums, of these criminal elements around him. He didn't have a gun, he didn't have a stick, and so on. He was being hit from behind. He fell down. They stamped on him, stamped on his head, kicked him in the belly, kicked him in the groin, kicked him everywhere. What can justify this level of violence and so on? Now, as we speak, my colleagues have already spoken about that. As we speak in the studio, there's a gentleman who is a footballer whose leg is about to be amputated. You understand? His leg is about to be amputated. And I feel so sad and ashamed that responsible members or otherwise persons that we believe could be responsible. I'm very careful about calling them responsible members of society. You know, sometimes their conduct does not show that they are responsible members of society. In the face of these atrocities, in the face of all of this, somebody is in hospital, is about to be amputated. Their focus is on the raising of a placard. My goodness. I'm ashamed. People are shooting to kill. They are incapacitating citizens. They are armed to the teeth and so on. And they're not concerned about it. They don't have any sense of revulsion at the level of violence which has been unleashed on our people. Their worry is that somebody has written something on a placard. Jesus Christ. What is this? Where is our society going? Is that the moral society? Priests, university professors and so on, they don't care about people who are shooting to kill. Hoodlums. My Jesus Christ. Their worry is about a placard. In any case, look, those of them who are lawyers and so on, they know of the maxim that those who seek equity ought to come with clean hands. I believe fully in standing up for the disadvantaged in our society. I believe that the rights of women must be protected and defended. I believe that the rights of children needs to be protected and defended. We need to defend the rights of albinos to function as normal citizens of our society and so on. It's our duty so to do. But what does that mean? Does that mean that when albinos commit crime, we should not discuss the crime they have committed and seek punishment for albinos? Does that mean that when children commit heinous crimes and so on, they should walk free without any sanction, without condemnation by society and so on? So now we are in a world in which, because of our commitment to the defense of women's rights and so on, women are above the law, can do as they please, can profit from crime, and that nobody is allowed to comment on the fact that they profited from crime and so on. What is this rubbish? Now, my brother, listen to me very carefully. Look, this lady, Lydia Alhassan, she had no qualms at all about picking little children whose father's body was still in the mortuary, who were still grieving the death of their father, and parading them in the streets of Ayawasu, West Wagon, in order to make political gains. She was willing to exploit these children, their vulnerability, their pain, and so on. She was willing to exploit it for her political gain. Those commenting about the placard, they didn't see pictures of those children being paraded in the streets for political gain. Didn't they see it? What hypocrisy. Master, this same woman, didn't she know that these criminal elements, these gangsters and so on, were being armed to do what they did in the Ayawasu West Wagon constituency for her benefit? She knew. Can she say that she didn't know? What moral authority does she have and her supporters? What moral authority do they have? What moral high ground do they have to stand on? And so on. I'm completely disgusted by this level of hypocrisy. So I'm totally disgusted by this level of hypocrisy, this level of the display of double standards. Now, who are these elements who committed the mayhem and so on? Everybody knows. There's nobody who has been following the events who doesn't know who these elements are. Social media has been used for all kinds of things, but on this occasion, social media has been used to expose wrongdoers and criminals. You've seen photographs of these elements at NPP rallies, wearing NPP paraphernalia. You've seen them dining and wining with the top leaders of the NPP and so on. Their identities have been revealed as members of the Delta Force, as members of the invisible forces, and so on. They have been totally unmasked. So we know who they are. Now, how did they get into the security services? Yesterday, I was having a discussion with one of the leaders of the New Patriotic Party. And he said, but they are Ghanaians. They are entitled to be employed. What rubbish. What utter rubbish. My brothers, just imagine that when President Mahama assumed office, he appointed Chief Sofo Azoka as National Security Coordinator. What would have happened in this country? What will the MPP have said? Just imagine that. What would the MPP have said? Just imagine that an NDC government decided to appoint Sofo Azoka as National Security Coordinator. What would they have said? Is Azoka not a Ghanaian? Those people who wreaked violence in the Ayawasu West Wagon by-election, are they more Ghanaian than Sofo Azoka? Are they more Ghanaian? Azoka, he does not have a right to be employed. But imagine that he was made head of national security. What would have happened? Yes, we are all Ghanaians. But it's not every Ghanaian who can be assigned certain duties. Why? The armed robbers who are in jail, are they not Ghanaians? All these armed robbers, are they not Ghanaians? So why don't we bring the armed robbers, grant them pardon, and say that they all need jobs and so on, and then employ them in the Criminal Investigations Department and applaud them because they're all Ghanaians and they need jobs. I mean, this argument is so silly, so childish. It's unbelievable. But you have politicians who are going out publicly, unashamedly, arguing that they are all Ghanaians and therefore they should be employed everywhere. You know, these invisible forces, and somebody made that point in the course of the week, we should be very careful. Since their formation, have you ever heard, apart from what has happened recently, that they are attacking and beating CPP members? Have you ever heard them? Have you ever heard that they are attacking and beating PNC members? Have you ever heard that they've gone to MDC headquarters to burn vehicles and so on? All the vehicles they have burnt were MPP vehicles burnt in the MPP headquarters. 90% of the people they have beaten and maimed are MPP members. These are the people who went to MPP headquarters and burnt a car and burnt motor bicycles. These are the people who went to MPP headquarters with cutlasses and so on. They are the people who smashed Kwabena Japan's car. They are the people who attacked Antonio Sayakoto in Kumasi. So they should be careful. These guns they are giving these boys will one day be turned on them. And when the guns are turned on them, they should continue saying that they are all Ghanaians and they are entitled to bear weapons and they are entitled to be employed and so on. They should learn from the recent history of this, you know, madness and so on. Now, my brother, we are talking about this phenomena of vigilantism. And surprisingly, there are some people in our society who even sometimes say, oh, acts of vigilantism is good. I'm sure you've heard them. Acts of vigilantism is good and so on. How can vigilantism be good? Look, vigilantism led to the crisis in Rwanda. In Rwanda, in a space of 100 days, more than 1 million people were butchered to death. That's about 1,000 a day. That's about 1,000 people a day were butchered to death as a result of vigilantism. You see, you need to look at the history of a country like Haiti under Papa Doc and Baby Doc. They took vigilantism to new heights. I think we are trying to surpass what happened in Haiti. But Haiti took vigilantism to new heights. It was they who established what came to be known as the Tom-Tom Makuts. The Tom-Tom Makuts were also dressed up in national security uniforms. They were armed and they killed and maimed anybody who voiced opposition to Papa Doc and Baby Doc. They killed and maimed. You understand? Look at history everywhere. What vigilantism has done. And I think we ought to be extremely careful about vigilantism. Everybody and anybody with a little bit of passion for our country is standing up and cautioning about the dangers of promoting vigilantism, and we are not listening. Before the elections, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we were crying out loud for an end to vigilantism. We have been totally ignored. It is spreading. Now, we've come to the point where indeed these vigilantes are carrying national security identity cards and national security weapons and are driving around in police vehicles. You know, there are many dangers associated with this. When I'm driving home at night and I'm stopped by a policeman, how can I tell whether that person in police uniform and armed in the night is a genuine security official or is a political party vigilante? How can I tell? How do I obey police instructions? When the policeman waves me to stop, How do I know that I'm safe or I'm not safe? That is the kind of danger that has been imposed upon us. Now, you don't know who is a genuine policeman. You don't know who is a party policeman. You don't know who is a hoodlum who has been picked up from some criminal den and given a weapon and a uniform. We are all in danger. All of us are in serious danger. And I'm frightened about the consequences of all of this. And all of us ought to be frightened about the consequences of what is happening. Now, you know, in the course of all this mayhem and so on, the security officials were asked questions. Interestingly, all the police officers made one point, that they didn't know the people who were behaving like this. That we don't know them, they are not our men, and so on. How come? People driving around in police vehicles, carrying AK-47 rifles and G3 rifles and so on, and the police hierarchy did not know anything about them. And the police hierarchy did not make any attempt to stop them, to arrest them, to impede them. We are in trouble. We are in very deep trouble. Because if you read the 1992 Constitution, it is clear. You cannot assign police duties to any policeman outside the structure of the police service. You know, when the president made his appointments, there were many people who focused attention on the number of ministers who have been appointed. A lot of people focused attention. But you see, there is something that we should have paid attention to, which we didn't. The very structure these appointees were going to fail. Look at the national security architecture. Look at national security architecture. You have a minister responsible for national security, and you have a minister of state responsible for national security. The minister for national security is residing in the ministries, in the Blue Gate, performing his duties. The minister of state for national security is in the presidency. Now, look at this architecture. Is it not possible to have appointed a minister for national security and a deputy minister for national security? Which clearly defines the hierarchy, clearly defines the lines of instruction and so on. Now, if you appoint a minister for national security, place him in the Blue House or Blue Gate, and appoint a minister of state who is not a deputy, and place him in the Flagstaff House, you blur the hierarchy, you blur the lines of communication. It's under these circumstances that this madness can occur. Look, I don't know the full facts. I don't know the full facts. And many of us now are making some of the comments on the basis of our knowledge of the personalities involved in the tango and so on. I can bet my bottom cedi, and I've said it on many occasions, that I would be surprised, seriously surprised, if it turns out that Mr. Albert Kandapa was at the center of this operation. I'll be surprised, I'll be shocked. It would destroy everything I've known about him for 20 years. He's a decent man. He does not believe in this senseless violence and so on. So I'll be surprised. You understand? I'm not saying that he was not involved. I'm just saying that based on my knowledge of him and who he is and so on, I'll be surprised if he was at the center of this. Now, if he didn't know, if he was not at the center of this, how come that the Minister of National Security was not at the center of such a major operation? Somebody must explain. You understand? It is strange, absolutely strange. You understand? Now, who do you have claiming ownership of the violence and the perpetrators. The Minister of State at the presidency, he says he did it. How did he do it? What legal framework did he use in order to do this, and so on? You understand? It beats me completely. It beats me completely. It's Master, a lot of people are taking what has happened lightly. It is not that light. This thing which has started could lead to total chaos in our country. Total chaos. Just imagine that other political parties decide to fight back. And it is possible to fight back. I mean, I've heard some people asking questions like, oh, if the other parties decide to fight back, where are they going to get arms and so on? They are ignorant. In today's world, based on existing technology, if you want to create weapons that can blow up whole story buildings, blow up whole areas and so on, Master, you don't have to go to the Soviet Union to go and buy their sophisticated weapons and so on. You just walk into a drugstore. Everything you need is in a drugstore. Do you know the kind of damage you can do with 2 bags of fertilizer? 2 bags of fertilizer, if you know the technology, fertilizer, ordinary fertilizer, 2 bags. Indeed, I was talking to a special forces person about 3 weeks ago, and he was telling me that, oh, why? You are worrying your head about fertilizer and so on. All you need is bottles and petrol. Bottles and petrol and nails and so on. You understand? So don't let anybody kid himself that the state has a monopoly over weapons which can cause massive destructions and so on. Of course, we all want a society in which there will be no violence, in which there will be no need to buy fertilizers, in which there will be no need to buy nails and petrol and bottles. We don't want that kind of society. We want to have a peaceful society. We want to have a society in which everybody, can be free and so on, And then, yes, the other dimension, they say there are over 200,000 unlicensed guns and so on. Who possess those unlicensed guns? Don't let us set our country ablaze. 200,000 unlicensed guns.
2 million.
Well, my brother says that there are 2 million unlicensed guns. 2 million unlicensed guns. So if people decide to use these guns to protect themselves, 2 million, what will happen to our country? Our leaders must start thinking and stop behaving like hoodlums. Our leaders have a responsibility to behave as statesmen and women. Our leaders have a responsibility to behave as people who want to protect this nation from doom and so on. And stop this recklessness, this absolute recklessness which is not taking our country anywhere. I'm frightened about the future of this society. And there's a lot of discontent. There's a lot of discontent. And if you like, check. In all the security services, the policemen and women, decent policemen and women, they're saying that this is being done in our name. It's destroying our integrity. They are doing this to destroy our reputation and so on. There's anger in the security services. There are many, many soldiers who are saying that, how can we allow this to happen? They are destroying us. They are making us villains and we have nothing to do with it. And I think it's important that government pays some attention to the level of discontent which is building up in the regular security forces as a result of these reckless actions, because we want a peaceful Ghana. Because all of us want a Ghana in which we can go about our lawful business without let or hindrance and threats and so on. That's the kind of Ghana we are all looking for. Now, since this happened, a number of measures appear to have been taken by government. And I think we should examine them. I mean, yesterday I was hearing my good friend, Kojo Opon Nkrumah, on radio, announcing a road map. Road map. People are armed, they are shooting people, they are breaking legs, they are causing trouble. And road map. Road map. And when I heard road map, I thought perhaps they were thinking about the introduction of electric trains, which will move goods and people from Accra to Burkina Faso. Road map. And it's about dealing with this reckless vigilantism. Road map. That's what Kojo Opon Nkrumah is talking about. Road map. Hey, baby. What is this? Road map. You have seen people feely who have caught people, including a parliamentarian, and beating them to pulp. You have seen people feely, gani, with guns, shooting into crowds and so on. And the way to deal with them is to develop a road map. Hey, so now what can country be this one? Your country, what can country be this one? Road map for dealing with this. They should stop talking like that. They annoy us more when they talk like that. It's very annoying to hear our leaders talking about road maps to dealing with the problem. Road maps indeed. You know. Then there's the other measure which has been taken, which is the setting up of a commission of inquiry. Indeed, there are many civil society organizations which actually call for the setting up of a commission of inquiry. And I think that for many parts of our society, they'll be happy that there's an attempt to build up the empirical facts which would enable all of us to react, properly to what has happened and so on. But then it has been pointed out, or it was pointed out very clearly, that you cannot set up a commission of inquiry as they did, and that to set up a commission of inquiry, you need to come by constitutional instrument. So when I heard that they had set up a commission of inquiry without a constitutional instrument, I said, but why are we taking this commission of inquiry and its report and so on? Because at the initial there's a problem. Anybody can throw it out, can throw the whole commission out and throw its report out and so on. Now yesterday, however, we were told that government had rectified the situation, or that government really intended to come by way of a constitutional instrument. But that the constitutional instrument doesn't have to go to Parliament. And that all they have to do is to gazette the constitutional instrument. And that if they gazetted the constitutional instrument, it was in compliance with the Constitution. I hope so. I'm not a lawyer, I don't know. My brother here is the lawyer. Maybe he will throw a lot more light on it, And I can also understand perhaps why they announced the measure without going through the appropriate legal processes. The indication perhaps is that, Massa, the people, they see fire. Fire, they come, they see them. You understand? And if you are in the midst of this kind of situation, hey, Massa, you have to announce something very quickly before the people get even angrier. And you know why? I mean, I saw the demonstration which was organized by Bernard and others, all the opposition political parties and so on. And you know what was amazing about that demonstration? Around that time, if you went on Facebook, there were many people who were saying that, we would like to join the demonstration, but we are afraid. I'm sure you all saw it. Because these Tonton Makus could attack us anytime and so on. So they didn't want to. So the demonstration took place in an atmosphere of fear, a lot of fear, that so many thousand people turned out. Is an indication of the courage of the Ghanaian people and their determination to show abhorrence for this madness that is creeping into our politics. And I'm so impressed by the demonstration. You understand? Since yesterday, some attempts are being made to devalue the demonstration and to create the impression that, oh, it also degenerated into violence. NDC goons were attacking people and so on. And you've seen some of the newspapers this morning. My brother, what happened? The story I'm hearing, and if it is true, I'm not so sure that it is true, but the story I'm hearing is that one of the goons who actually beat up Sam George was seen in the vicinity of the demonstration with arms. Master, any political party, any group organizing a demonstration, if it had come across somebody who was a perpetrator of the violence and who was armed and so on, would have attacked him.
And justifiably so.
Yes, because it's an extreme provocation. Extreme provocation. In law, you know what extreme provocation means. You went and beat some George. You were part of these hoodlums and so on. And then, when there's a demonstration against what you have done, you actually go and stand in the part of the demonstration with a weapon. And you expect the demonstrators to come and kiss you on both cheeks. But you're expecting the demonstrators to go and kiss him on both cheeks. It doesn't happen. Maybe it shouldn't happen, but it doesn't happen. You understand? Now, there's also a lot of noise about what former President John Mahama said, boot for boot. What does it mean? It means that if you boot me, I will boot you back. So if you don't want to be booted back, don't boot. That's all. I'm saying that, look, if you slap me, I'll slap you back. And then you say, hey, you are violent. Why do you want to slap me? And why do you want me to turn the other cheek? Am I Jesus the Christ? I'm not. I'm a human being. He says, don't boot me. We all want peace. Don't boot me. If you don't boot me, me too, I will boot you. There will be peace. Everybody will be happy. He said, no, I will boot you, but when I boot you, don't boot me back. Hey, what is this? The man is not saying that I'm going to boot you. He says, don't boot me. If you boot me, I will boot you back. He said, no, I will boot you, but when I boot you, don't boot me back. Or if you threaten that when I boot you, you boot me back, then you're a violent man. What nonsense is that? Abi! Masa, I think I have to stop here. We are living in very dangerous times. We are living in times that principles have fled away. We are living in times when violence is becoming the weapon of choice of those we have mandated to look over our affairs. And I'm frightened about this looming danger. I think I want to stop here.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. And a couple of messages. This one from a teacher in Nungwa says, Senna, why is our president silent over the war zone recent violence? He left the country when we needed him most. I expect him to address the nation and frankly give us hope, even when hope is lost. And this one by Kojo Chumbuafo says, Senna, kindly remind your listeners of perhaps the most famous vigilantes in history, the brown shirts of Adolf Hitler's Nazi party, who terrorized perceived opponents for years and transformed into the murderous juggernaut that brought the world a world war that killed 70 million people. Not to mention concentration camps, gas chambers, and mass graves that are still evident today. The NPP government have begun on a good note. They have given their hoodlums brown uniforms. Congrats, NPP, you are emulating history with aplomb. You reap what you have sown with a bountiful harvest of rubble and bleached bones. And Dr. David Percy says, so the NDC still does not get it. Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, as president, is commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces, plus the regular or lawful security services. He is also commander-in-chief of the NPP paramilitary forces, privately set up by him as leader of the then opposition. Yes, he has appointed a minister of state at Flagstaff or Jubilee House to oversee the NPP paramilitary. But why waste ammunition on the hapless Brian Champon, who is a mere agent, when it is the president of our republic who is violating our laws. Mauli Kokunanegbe says, Senator, the point has been made that we don't need a commission of inquiry to start the prosecution of the party terror groups who were unleashed on innocent persons at Ayawaso West Wagon, particularly when Brian Champo had admitted deploying them and should by now be facing prosecution just as terror group members. Now, I find it quite curious discovering how Brian Champo had come to share some semblance in checks or to Ford de Sanko, Jonas Savimbi, and Joseph Kony. By the way, when is the government releasing these critical reports? Australia visa scandal probe, GIA request for update on corruption issues, Auditor General versus Audit Service Board Chair, interference probe, 2 Deputy Chief of Staff probe, among others. That is from Mauli Kokunanegbe, and a couple of messages coming in through our WhatsApp platform. And this one says, setting up a commission of inquiry is a waste of taxpayers' money and waste of time. Also, it's going to be chop and job for the boys. Tria, who says all die be die. NDC, let's come together as a formidable team and prepare very well towards 2020 election. That's from Eric Okono at La Paz. Don Leo from Abeka La Paz says, I at times blame my party NDC when we were in power for not nipping the NPP hooligans in the bud. But still, we must condemn the atrocity they meted out to innocent voters in Ayawaso West Wagon constituency by-election. And this one, Senna, good morning. Useless for a commission to be set up to investigate what every reasonable Ghanaian and even foreigners see as the obvious. This commission is a sham. I'm not doubting the capabilities of the members though, but they are there only to give legal backing to what Akufo-Addo said, a minor incident. That's from Newton in Jasican. Nana Samoa in Tamale says, good morning, Radio Golden, to my hardworking MP Suhini. You see what the MPP and MPP government are doing? They are trying to teach the opposition parties how to handle power, but not create loot and share. Charles Nyame Asamankese says, so what's the essence of this commission of inquiry when Honorable Brian Champo has already owned up as a source of this whole vigilantism at Ayawaso? The composition of this commission alone should tell us they are coming to sweep things under the carpet. Ghana is definitely not in safe hands, and the earlier we all make up our minds to kick out this failed MPP government come 2020, the better. And this one, Stella from Tema says, good morning, Senna. What did this president take Ghanaians for? Is he saying that he did not know anything about the shooting incident? The inquiry into this is not needed. The minister accepted that they are his men. What inquiry again? Nothing is going to come out from this inquiry. They should stop wasting taxpayers' money. Habib in Sawam says, good morning, Senna. Nana Akufo-Addo has turned Ghana into a jungle. Gangsterism is the order of the day because of the violent nature of our president. Violence is the order of the day, where vigilantes are more empowered than our security forces. Chaos and anarchy is the order of the day. Ghana is sinking. Corruption, nepotism, and its vices is the order of the day. NS and Adenta says, so is government saying it won't take the necessary steps to put the hundreds of new vehicles procured with state funds to judicious use because the cost was inflated? Does it make sense to leave those vehicles to rot so that the real cost to the nation becomes not just the inflated cost, but also the true cost of the vehicles, which we will not have used? Can't whoever is culpable be prosecuted even when the vehicles are being used? Oh, what kind of leaders have we entrusted our interest to? Papa Wemba says, MPP want to compare what happened at Ayawaso West Wagon to Talensi and Triponi. At Talensi and Triponi, the two parties brought in their own gangs and one overpowered one without any state cars and AK-47. But this one at Ayawaso, they were given state accoutrement to fight against the other. We need to change because this useless old man has nothing better to offer. And from Baba Botari and Ashali Boshe St. Peter says, good morning, Senna. Why have you... Now, to the issue at hand, Senna, the most dangerous person is the one who has nothing to lose. President Nana Addo has said he came to make history, and he has by becoming a president. He will not care if Ghana bends or he loses election. My problem is the head of Peace Council and the hypocrites who seek to see no fault of inhuman treatment to the victims of Ayawaso West Wogon, but want President Mahama to apologize for boot statement. Senna, should Ghana go into crisis, these people will leave their houses and hide in gutters just to save their lives. So they should carry on. God save us. Efia Kumazong Ablade, Adefia Kumazongo Takrade says that we will be Ayawaso West Wogon violence probe will be transparent, objective, says Justice Emil Short. I trust you, but can and will those ministers, leaders, and so-called officers who caused the violence be prosecuted? You will do your job all right, but trust me, the government will not do anything about it. The president himself will clear them all. And Emmanuel Chweko from Chado La. These policemen in this country are being paid with taxpayers' money in order to protect Ghanaians and are not doing enough for the safety of our people. For this, I'm not sure what he's trying to write, attitude of our police need to vacate their posts for we to know we don't have police in this country. And this one says, good morning, Comrade Senator Alasan Suini, Bernard Mona, and Honorable Agaga. Senator Suini have said it all. When you breed a calf that is a child of a lion, it will one day eat you up if it did not get the food. Senator, when NDC won power in 2008, some useless religious leaders and some influential diplomats begged the late Professor Mills to pardon the corrupt MPP members so that there will be utmost peace in the country. Now, some of these bogus men of God are at it again. God will deal with them squarely. As for God, he takes no bribe. Have a blessed day. That's from Hamza in Nima. So those are just some of the messages being sent through WhatsApp platform. Freddie Nadenta says, good morning, Senna. I think Bernie Champon was appointed to be in charge of MPP's paramilitary forces, such as Delta, Invisible Forces. Remember, anytime these hoodlums rear their ugly hairs, Brian is the one who go out there to negotiate. No wonder he claims responsibility for the actions in Ayawaso West Wogon. Now, we have about 10 minutes to go, so maybe we'll stay with that particular topic and take just some quick comments. What was your name?
Yes, and I would have loved to discuss the falling city, which has become a nightmare for traders in general and for anyone who has any reason to engage in any shopping lately. I intended, if we had time, to just go through the lecture that was presented by Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia without adding, further commentary. But I'm sure at the right time we will have the opportunity to discuss that. So permit me to stay with the first issue that we looked at. And there are two issues that I will tackle and express a few disagreements based on, a certain trajectory that I see. First of all, we've always had vigilantism, at least in this fourth Republican democracy, especially with by-elections. We have heard it, we have heard about it, and they have come in various forms. And there have always been the need for us to talk about vigilantism and how we should discourage it. I mean, even as I have my disagreements when it comes to comparing, what is referred to as NDC vigilante groups versus MPP vigilante groups, I want to grant it that, yes, we have had some level of vigilantism or vigilante groups, in the various political parties. Even as I have my disagreements when it comes to the direct comparisons that we want to make. I mean, if you go into it, you see that there's no direct comparison. But let's grant that there is that direct comparison. I am afraid that if we mix that with what happened in Ayawaso Wagon and not call what happened in Ayawaso Wagon what it is, once again, we are going to water down the threats that Ayawaso Wagon poses to our peace and the future of by-elections or elections in general in this country. So let's separate the discussion of vigilantism, that vigilante groups that we have always had, from what happened in Ayawaso Wagon, because what happened in Ayawaso Wagon was state-sponsored terrorism. It was state-sponsored terrorism, and that is what it has to be. I mean, that's how it has to be called, for a thorough examination of that isolated case. And that is why I agree with Bernard Mona when he said that when you look at the terms of reference of the commission that has been set up, even as I disagree and find it needless, it is clear that they are supposed to look at what happened in Ayawaso Wagon, because that is unprecedented. That is never seen before, never experienced before, at least in the fourth Republican constitution. I mean, the fourth Republican democracy. It's never been experienced. We have not had a situation where the state sponsors, people marks as security men to unleash mayhem like it happened. It is completely distinct from the discussions we have had in the past about vigilante groups. We can continue to have that discussion and discourage political parties from forming vigilante groups. But that is separate and distinct from the state-sponsored terrorism that we saw in Ayawaso Wagon, and that has to be, discussed as such.
It's just an escalation.
Yes, but you see, my fear. Fantastic, I agree. But my point is that if we do not separate and deal with it, we are going to have a report that will say all the parties are guilty.
No, all forms of vigilantism must be condemned and
fantastic. I don't have a problem with it.
Sponsored or not sponsored,
I don't have. That is why
we have to end it.
That is why I'm saying that. Look, when you talk about Willency, when you talk about, in fact, even before Willency was, yes, I mean, Willency was actually under the NPP. When you talk about all the other things that happened in Atiwa, Asawasi, and others, these were party vigilante groups that clashed. And like I'm saying, if you want to even describe it as, if you want to go down, you can see the distinctions. But let's say there were party vigilante groups that clash, and you had the state security in the middle in all these instances. You had party groups clashing and state security in the middle, even as they were unable to do as they should have done, but you still could identify the party groups. You could distinguish the party groups from the state security. But what we have now, yes, is an escalation, but it is also completely different from the vigilante groups that we have always talked about. And so let's deal with it as a new phenomenon.
We deal with all, including Atiwa and everything, and stop all this nonsense once and for all.
I think you are not getting me. I'm saying that there are two discussions. Let's continue both discussions. So let's deal with both. But let's not confuse them. Because when we do, it will water down the effect of this escalation. That's the point I'm making. Let's continue that two discussions.
Emphasize the escalation instead of dealing with something which can destroy our society.
We are saying the same thing. We are saying the same thing, but we are not listening, and they are not listening to me fairly. That is the point I'm making. It is not MPP NDC. I have said that both parties can be guilty of vigilante groups, even though you can go further and look at the forms that they have taken in those political parties. But the point too is that this escalation is different from what we have always known. Let's deal with both. But let us also not allow the first discussion of vigilante groups in the various political parties to water down the effect of this escalation. That has to be dealt with. What happened was state-sponsored terrorism. And never before, never again should that happen in our history. And then the issue of widowhood. And and maybe I should take this opportunity to just chip in as to how I came to be walked out by the Speaker of Parliament. You see, let me put it this way. It's not important, but I didn't know where the bloody placard came from. I didn't hold it. I wasn't even in the chamber. But the next day when the discussion took place, and I saw the level of hypocrisy displayed by the majority side, I thought that there was a need for us to stand up and to reject those pretentious calls for an apology. Because clearly, what I saw was a political stage that had been set to extract an apology that was needless so they could use it to play propaganda. Look, like Uncle Kwesi said, widows, like all vulnerable in our society, need to be protected. Before the placard, you had the president talk about deaf and dumb. They are vulnerable in the society. Where are these human rights activists who were speaking about the bloody widow thing? It took the Federation of Deaf and Dumb themselves to fight for themselves and to demand an apology from the president. No, none of these people who are champions of human rights spoke in their defense. But are all widows bloody? Are widows bloody? So why will you attribute bloody widow to all widows? Are widows bloody? Who has ever described a widow as being bloody? So if a placard is held and it says bloody widow, you should be looking for the widow who has blood on her hands, and not pretend to stretch it to, you know, the gender angle. Not all widows are bloody. In fact, widows are not bloody. They are not bloody. Widows are not bloody. And so widowhood is not a crime. But what is criminal is when people are maimed, blood is spilled, so that a widow can gain advantage in a society. That is criminal. That is criminal. And that has to be spoken about. Being a widow is not a crime. But when people kill in your name, when people, you know, spill blood in your name, when people maim others in your name, and you are a widow, and worst of it all, you do not show concern, you do not disapprove of that, and you gloat over your victory, when you of all should be the first person to be sensitive because you have just lost a dear one. I don't even want to say a husband, but you have just lost a dear one. So you should be the first to feel, to show empathy towards those who almost also lost their dear ones, whether sons or mothers or husbands. And none of that sort came from you. But you find people saying, oh, that bloody widow was an attack on widows. Just like we have seen in many instances when an attempt is made to, you know, hoodwink and deceive and engage in propaganda so that the effect of what we all consider serious will be watered down. No, I said no, it won't happen. And like my brother said, on the floor of Parliament, we have had people hold placards like stealers. Nobody asked them to apologize.
They were not widows.
Yeah, but they were not thieves too. They were not thieves too. We've had people actually dress. We have had people actually dress in mourning clothes when we were not. When nobody had died in Parliament. When the nation was not mourning. Yeah. They wore funeral clothes. And you know, apart from the fact that it was Professor Mills, there was also a message there because they had waged a campaign of him not being well and about to die. Let's not forget that. So the mourning clothes was not just an isolated issue. It was linked to the propaganda that they had waged about his ill health and his possible death. Yet they were that heartless to conduct themselves in that manner in Parliament. So when myself and my colleagues at the backbench charged on our leadership and insisted that we're not going to allow them to apologize on our behalf, and if they did that, they were on their own, the speaker couldn't stand me. And so he said I should walk out. And I walked out, you know, with pride. Because, and like I said, that's the worst he could do. But as for the apology, it wasn't coming. So those people who may have misconstrued or may have been hoodwinked by the propaganda that Bloody Widow was an attack on widows, and they expressed some reservations and concerns, I grant them that. I grant them that. And I appreciate, you know, the concerns that they have raised and the suggestion that perhaps maybe a widow would. I appreciate those concerns. Those are those people who are genuine and have been, have been hoodwinked or may have been misconstrued to think that way. I grant them their concerns. I can't challenge that. Okay. But as for these politicians, and I mean the NPP politicians, who have done worse in our history and continue to do worse, should spare us their sermons from the brothel.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Mona, briefly.
Well, nothing much to say, except to say that I think that vigilantism has become a source of employment. There are people that are promoting vigilantes. There are people who actually claim they own these groups. And what they do is that anytime you need their services, you go to contract them. They come and deliver what you want to do. I've just picked information that those who delivered what Rainer Champong wanted at Ayawaso West Wagon, some were paid as high as 500 Ghana cedis.
That's high?
Yes,
5,000 or
500 Ghana cedis. No, that should tell you the level of penury that engulfs our society. That just for that for 500 Ghana cedis, somebody could actually go and do what they did in the Ayawaso West Wagon area. Should tell you that these people are actually in need. And some of the kidnappings, I was listening to Kwesi Pratt the other time. He said one of the kidnappers was demanding 50 Ghana cedis. 50 Ghana cedis, nothing more. So you can imagine that when you are giving 500 cedis, what you are going to do. And as I said, those who are celebrating that their party is in power and they have vigilantes and they are enjoying, they should not forget that these people can easily blackmail and fall out. Because today you are in a position to give 1 cedi, tomorrow you give 1 cedi. On the third count, when they are not able to get 1 cedi, they are looking for the next person that will give them the 1 cedi so that they can turn their arsenal on you. So in the whole, vigilantism is horrible. The individuals that are used in this are those that are virtually vulnerable in our society. But above that, what transpired in Ayawaso West Wagon is even the worst of it, where a minister of state admits publicly that he sponsored that activity and used state resources to do that. I think that by now we should be heading to the ICC.
Oh,
yeah, Senator, quickly, I'd like to state that I have read the concerns of my teacher, Dr. Kwesi Nin, who argues that Parliament itself is comatose, and that if Parliament were proactive, there wouldn't have been the need for the executive arm to even attempt to set up the needless commission of inquiry that it has now set up. My teacher is right. But we cannot bear responsibility and blame for allowing the parliamentary committees to go comatose. Remember that we're in the minority. If you look at the composition of the Defense and Interior Committee, we're 18 in all. the minority accounts for just seven of the number. The rest are drawn from the majority in parliament. Now, you remember what happened in the case of the cash for seat scandal. The majority would simply come out and try to whitewash, even when there is no consensus on the committee's report. The report is released without the input of the minority. That is the parliament we have. So the minority are helpless in the circumstances. Look, when the violence at Ayawaso broke, the Interior Minister and the Inspector General of Police came to Parliament and briefed the Committee for Defense and Interior. I consented to the briefing, and it went well. But in the case of the Minister of State for National Security, like Kwesi tried to establish, there is total chaos. And even if you like, you can say there is a power struggle because of the way and manner the president has handed out positions to his people. Who really is in charge, we cannot tell. Whether it's Kandapa, yes, Kandapa is the one who has responsibility and sits in cabinet in the name of that ministry. But what is the role of Brian Achampong? And so I was constrained in the circumstances to invoke the standing orders, which also allows members to direct questions specifically at individuals who are complicit in matters that Parliament feels it should exercise its oversight mandate. So I have filed questions and directed them specifically at Brian Achampong, not Kandapa. Not Kandapa. Because remember that it is Brian Achampong who came out and took ownership of the violence that was orchestrated at Ayawaso West Wuagon. So I just want to inform my teacher, Dr. Kwesi Nin, that we are not exactly comatose. We are making the effort, but I wouldn't have allowed or consented to a brief, because remember the briefings are usually done in camera. I wouldn't have allowed Brian Achampong to appear before us and do an in-camera briefing, so that what? At the end of the day, you are disabled from going to the plenary to ask him questions. I want to ask Brian Achampong questions so that the whole world can hear him, how he would fare, how he would respond to those questions. These are some of the steps we have taken. But as for the attitude in Parliament, sometimes it's not right. Suini was walked out. A statement was made the other day on the murder of Ahmed Swale. And when I stood up to contribute, my only crime was that I attempted to make some similarities between Swale's murder and Jamal Khashoggi. I was stopped in my tracks by Mr. Speaker. I was not walked out, but I stormed out in anger. So we need to watch conduct of leadership, because Parliament is the one of the most important institutions of state, one of the arms of government that must check the excesses of the executive. But where you have a situation whereby members, because of what they say, sometimes you want to make a contribution and we are stopped in a manner that is unacceptable, it seriously speaking doesn't augur well for parliamentary oversight.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable. Well, that should end it.